Chapter 469. After the discussion, Chen Liang wanted to ask his father to come over immediately. However, his subordinate told him that the governor was busy with the provincial capital and could not find the time for now. Beligaju did not say anything. He only wrote a few simple words to the manservant and asked him to pass the letter to Governor Chen. His actions were casual. The manservant was stunned. He did not understand how an advisor from a county could be so daring to order him around. "Young master, this master doesn't accept just anyone's letter." The manservant had his reasons for saying so. Ever since Governor Chen took office, many officials tried to get close to him by writing letters. If he accepted the letter, it would be troublesome in the future. Hellion Vivian curled her lips into a smile when she heard this. "Don't worry, your master will definitely accept my advisor's letter." Beligaju brushed his clothes. His handsome side profile was full of mischief. Chen Liang could not help but swallow his saliva when he saw this. He did not expect his subordinate to say such a thing. He slapped the back of the manservant's head hard and said, "What are you nagging about? Go quickly. If you delay this letter, you'll see how my father will punish you." The manservant was not completely clueless. After hearing his young master's words, he more or less figured it out. Could it be that he had another identity? But what was his identity? Was he more important than his master? The manservant could not figure it out. However, he still had to listen to his young master, so he hurriedly sent the letter out. After the matter was settled, Hellion Vivian did not plan to stay for long. She planned to return home. Although Fuping County was not far away from the provincial capital, the management of the land was urgent. Moreover, the money mentioned by the imperial grandfather was coming soon. She had to stay in Fuping County to protect the money. When Chen Liang heard that Hellion Wei was leaving, he wanted to tag along as well. "Boss, just let me go with you. If anything happens to both of you within my father's jurisdiction, my father will definitely regret not coming to visit you today. Besides, I want to help the people of Fuping County too." Hellion Vivian thought for a moment and said, "You can follow us, but you have to be careful not to reveal our identity." "That's not a problem." Chen Liang had just finished making a promise. When he turned his head and saw Beligaju's godlike face, he couldn't help but move to the side. If others saw his humble appearance, they would be very surprised. Everyone in the provincial capital knew that although young Master Chen didn't run amok in the village like other people, his temper was so bad that even his father couldn't do anything about it. Wherever he went, he would be praised by others. Now, Hellion Vivian smiled heartlessly and allowed Beligaju to reach out and hold her. She lowered her voice and said, "Is it fun to bully my little brother? When have I ever bullied him?" Beligaju brushed aside the strands of hair on her face, revealing his noble aura. Hellion Vivian pursed her lips. "He's like a mouse seeing a cat when he sees you. That's his problem." Beligaju curved his thin lips into a faint smile. Chen Liang was speechless. "Can you two be quieter when you're showing off your love?" He heard everything. Okay. It was not a big deal to bring Chen Liang along. After all, they were in Fuping County and he was a provincial law enforcement officer. No matter how daring that Liao guy was, he wouldn't dare to do anything to the governor's second son. Hellion Vivian thought that Chen Liang might come in handy when Governor Chen couldn't make it. Chen Liang was so happy that he was blowing bubbles in his heart when she told him that. He had never been so valued by his boss before. In short, the few martial arts students who graduated from the academy always had an inhuman sense of admiration for Hellion Vivian. It was not only because she was the boss of Profound Heaven, but more importantly, everyone in the academy only took the young masters and ladies from the capital of the superior compound seriously and treated them with a lukewarm attitude. Hellion Vivian was the only one who didn't discriminate between them because of the different compounds. She would often tell them where to put some materials so that they could make lighter martial arts. Until now, Chen Liang would still look at his boss with starry eyes. He really didn't expect Hellion Vivian to be an official. It was so difficult to be an official. He had participated in more than 10 written examinations, but he had never passed. He didn't expect that his boss would become a county magistrate right after she graduated from the academy. She was so amazing. That was why people said that children were too naive. They didn't know that there was such a thing as taking the back door. Hellion Vivian patted Chen Liang's head. It wasn't easy for you to grow up. Governor Chen was the one who didn't have it easy. Beligaju added insult to injury with an indifferent expression. Chen Liang was speechless. Why did he feel like his IQ was being mocked? It was almost dusk. The news of the road construction in Fuping County had spread throughout the provincial capital. Magistrate Liao was in the limelight. The officials from other counties wanted to meet Magistrate Liao at this time. Even if they couldn't get a share of the benefits, at least Magistrate Liao would definitely be promoted after the project was completed. It was better for them to build their relationship now than to travel thousands of miles to find him in the capital. As Old Master Yang, who had worked with Magistrate Liao for many years, there was no need to mention the benefits. Even Private Advisor Zhong would be looked up to wherever he went now. He was holding a Yixing clay teapot in his hand. When he saw Hellion Vivian and the rest walking into the Yamen, he exclaimed, "Lord Wei, who went to the provincial capital to beg for alms for the people, is finally back. I wonder how it went. Did you see the people from the provincial capital?" Hellion Vivian glanced at him and smiled without saying anything. When Private Advisor Zhong saw that there was only one more person, he had an answer in his heart. If Lord Wei really saw the people, he should have received the money. It was impossible for him to come back in such a state. Someone should have sent him back. Furthermore, he did not receive a letter from the provincial capital saying that someone had met the person in the provincial capital. It seemed that Lord Wei had not even touched the surface. Private Advisor Zhong did not know that Hellion Vivian had not only received the money, but also brought along the beloved son of the person in the provincial capital. When he saw Hellion Vivian's situation, he thought that she had come back empty-handed. He said sarcastically, "Sigh, this is how life is. Not everything can be done according to one's wishes. Some places can only be entered through connections. Lord Wei, you don't have to feel depressed about this." Private Advisor Zhong took a sip from the Yixing clay teapot as he spoke. His smug expression was enough to make anyone want to beat him up. Hellion Vivian replied slowly, "Am I depressed? How can you tell?" Private Advisor Zhong put down the teapot in his hand. When Chen Liang heard this, he was wondering where this old man came from and why he was so arrogant. Then, Private Advisor Zhong spoke again. Chapter 470. Magistrate Liao and Old Master Yang have gone to the provincial capital. I guess they are discussing with Lord Chen about the road construction. Oh right, Lord Wei, you don't know who Lord Chen is, right? Who is he? Hellion Vivian asked him playfully. The newly appointed governor of the 3 provinces is someone who was transferred from the capital. You don't know how good Lord Li's relationship with Magistrate Liao is. In my opinion, there should be no problem with the road construction. When the time comes, as long as we behave ourselves and don't cause trouble for Magistrate Liao, we will definitely have a chance to be promoted. Private Advisor Zhong spoke as if he had seen how close Magistrate Liao and Governor Chen were. Chen Liang, on the other hand, cursed out loud. How could he not know who his father was close to? His father hated this Magistrate Liao the most. The only reason why he could sit down and talk to him was because they couldn't fall out with each other. Close. If they were close, how could this fellow not know that the person standing in front of him was Magistrate Liao's son? Hellion Wei's lips curved into a smile. Chen Liang looked at her with tears in his eyes. "Boss, don't stop me. Let me beat him to death." Hellion Vivian patted his shoulder, telling him not to get agitated. How could he not be agitated? These people were simply slandering his father. "Boss, tell the royal family that my father is definitely a good official. Although he is not very pure, there is a difference between him and these people." Hellion Vivian wanted to laugh when she saw his big, watery eyes. However, this was not the right place. She could only look at Beligaju. Beligaju walked over and lowered his voice so that only Chen Liang could hear him. "If you let her touch your shoulder again, do you believe that I will let you walk out of here on your back?" Chen Liang immediately stood up straight. However, he felt wronged. Boss was only comforting him. Isn't the royal family being too possessive? Private Advisor Zhong was not aware of what was going on between the two of them. He assumed that they were merely two of Helion Wei's subordinates who were having a discussion. He continued proudly, "Lord Wei, listen to me. I've been in Fuping County for a few years now. What you're doing now is a waste of effort. Why don't you follow Magistrate Liao and the others and do something practical? That way, you'll be promoted faster." According to what Private Advisor Zhong said, being an official is only for quick promotion. "Can't I work for the people?" Helion Vivian asked him in return. Private Advisor Zhong's expression darkened. He put on a fake smile and said, "That depends on what Lord Wei thinks. It's getting late and I still have some matters to attend to. Lord Wei, you should rest early. Who knows, you might dream of someone offering you money to cure the drought." These words were brimming with sarcasm. It was simply saying that Helion Wei wanted to accomplish this task, but was simply a fool's dream. Private Advisor Zhong did not wait for Helion Vivian to reply. He left with his servant. Chen Liang was furious. "This is the first time in my life that I've seen a private advisor who dares to challenge a county magistrate. There's no law in Fuping County. Boss, how can you hold it in? I don't have any status. It's normal for me to encounter such a situation." Helion Vivian asked the Yamen runners to serve her tea. After they left, she continued, "I'll deal with these people sooner or later. What's the fun in dealing with one? It's more interesting to deal with them all at once." Chen Liang was still angry at first. However, when he heard Helion Vivian's words, his blood boiled. He thought about his boss's methods in the past. Every single one of them was amazing. What was she planning to do this time? "Boss, when do you plan to take action? Call me along. These scourges only have their own career and money in their eyes. They don't deserve to speak for the people." Helion Vivian knew that this child was honest. She rubbed her ring with her finger. There was a cold light in her eyes. "Don't be anxious. They should be the ones who are anxious now." Magistrate Liao and Old Master Yang were indeed anxious. They were about to receive the money, but the person who delivered the money said that they had to go through the county magistrate of Fuping County. This was a rule set by the higher-ups. Governor Chen was also very cunning. He was always evading the question and would not reveal any information about what was really important. This made Magistrate Liao a little angry. As soon as he returned to Fuping County, he asked someone to summon Helion Vivian. He said that it was a banquet, but in front of the county magistrates, he reminded them without naming them. He said that some people should consider the big picture and not only think about trivial matters. The most important thing for Fuping County and the surrounding counties and villages was to build roads. Only with roads could the people become rich. "Don't worry, I won't monopolize everything. If the road construction is done well, the people will be happy, and so will the imperial court. We don't have to do those messy things anymore. Just put away your thoughts." Helion Vivian listened as if she did not hear him. She smiled faintly and turned the teacup in her hand. Magistrate Liao looked at her sideways. "Lord Wei, tell me your thoughts." "My thoughts?" Helion Vivian drank her tea calmly. "I've told Magistrate Liao the last time that the second drought is coming. I'm only thinking about how to deal with it now." Magistrate Liao said sarcastically, "Lord Wei is really a good official who brings benefits to the people. However, Lord Wei should be more open-minded sometimes. Perhaps no one wants to do anything to you." The other officials laughed. Magistrate Liao was hinting that Helion Vivian thought too highly of herself. In their eyes, she was not worth mentioning at all. Helion Wei narrowed her eyes as the corners of her mouth curved up. "Then let's wait and see." When the crowd heard this, they laughed wantonly again. They had also heard about this newly appointed county magistrate of Fuping County. Not only did she have no background, but she also recklessly went to the provincial capital. In the end, she came back dejected and defeated without even seeing anyone. They wondered how confident she was to dare to go against Magistrate Liao in such a situation. She even thought that she could change the situation in Fuping County with her own strength. Ha ha ha, what a country bumpkin. She was simply courting death. However, they did not know that at this moment, the governor of the 3 provinces, Lord Chen, who had just returned to the provincial capital, received a very important letter. "Old Master, You're finally back. The servant stood at the door and anxiously handed the letter to Lord Chen. This is from the private advisor of the young master's friend. He asked me to pass this to you. The private advisor of the young master's friend? Lord Chen thought about how messy the relationship was as he opened the paper. There were only a few words on the paper, but they were written in bold and vigorous calligraphy. However, these were not important. What was important was the signature at the bottom of the paper. Chapter 471. Why would he come here? Governor Chen's expression changed in an instant. He felt as if he was struck by lightning. The servant watched his master's expression change from tiredness to intense disbelief. Before he could react, his master grabbed his sleeve tightly. Where is the person who wrote the letter now? I'm not sure. The servant did not understand why his master, who had always been as calm as a mountain, would suddenly become so agitated. He stuttered, but I heard that he was the private advisor of Fuping County Magistrate. He should have returned to Fuping County by now. Governor Chen shook his head with a bitter smile. He's not a private advisor, his. Governor Chen paused intentionally as if he had thought of something. He was very regretful. Sigh. Why didn't I receive this letter earlier? Not a private advisor. Then what is it? Xiao Feng asked blankly. Governor Chen did not know what to do with these people around his beloved son. Each one of them was dumber than the other. Wait a minute. Where's the young master? Governor Chen asked. Xiao Feng touched his head. He should have gone to Fuping County with the private advisor. Governor Chen smiled when he heard that. Liangzi has finally done something that a human should do this time. Quickly prepare a carriage for me. I'm going to Fuping County now. But master, it's going to be dark soon. It's not safe to travel at night in this remote village. Xiao Feng was thinking about what could be more important than his master's safety. However, Governor Chen was very insistent. Go quickly. If you're too slow, I'll punish you. After listening to these words, Xiao Feng became more and more curious about the two people from Fuping County. Logically speaking, they were just a lowly county magistrate and a private advisor. How did the young master and the master become so different from their usual selves? Unless... Xiao Feng suddenly came to a realization, and his eyes started to shake. Unless those two people had some kind of extraordinary identity, to be able to hide so deeply, who exactly was it? The only people who were older than his master were those in the capital city. Xiao Feng did not dare to think further. He suddenly shuddered. The sky outside darkened even more. The atmosphere in the restaurant had obviously changed. Many people were intentionally or unintentionally excluding Hellion Vivian. Private advisor Zhong was so arrogant now that he had the upper hand. Old Master Yang had even announced that he would beat anyone who dared to stop him from capturing the maidservants in the future. That being said, no one dared to approach Da Xiong when he was staying with the Liu family. However, before this wave could subside, a new wave rose from that wave. Magistrate Liao was naturally angry when Hellion Vivian refused to sign the money. This Wei person was really giving him a headache, but he couldn't kill her directly. After all, assassinating an official of the imperial court was punishable by death. However, she was blocking his way of making money. It was annoying to see her like this. If he didn't teach her an unforgettable lesson, he wouldn't be able to swallow his anger. Private advisor Zhong observed his expression and said in a low voice, "Don't worry, Lord Liao. The people from the provincial capital will be here tomorrow. When they arrive, I'll arrange a good show and let that Wei person suffer a great loss. He's just a newcomer, he doesn't know anything about Fuping County, let alone the villagers of Fuping County. When the time comes, he'll know what it means to refuse a toast. He'll suffer a forfeit." After Magistrate Liao listened to Private Advisor Zhong's plan, a smile finally appeared on his face. He clinked the wine cup in his hand with Private Advisor Zhong's and reminded him and Old Master Yang to sell the grain in the warehouse as soon as possible. Magistrate Liao had a good plan. He would not return to Fuping County in the future. Since Jiao Sheng had left this time, he would take as much as he could. Wouldn't it be foolish to leave a pile of disaster relief food for the next greedy person? He might as well take all the food and use it to bribe the higher-ups when he arrived at the capital city. Unlike them, Hellion Vivian only had one thing on her mind, which was to fight a drought. She asked a few shadow guards to do some reconnaissance to confirm the land trend of Fuping County. Then, she went to the river to take a look. Chen Liang did not understand. Boss, there's water here, but it's too far away from the fields. It'll tire the villagers out if they have to come here to fetch water. If they look like me and Da Xiong, it'll be easy. Each of us can carry 4 buckets. I can carry 10 buckets. Da Xiong chuckled, I'm strong, so I can carry more. In response, Little Bald Head, who appeared behind the crowd, pouted with a meat bun in his mouth arrogantly, only 10 buckets. Isn't 10 buckets a lot? Chen Liang's first reaction was to jump up. He was dumbfounded when he turned around to take a look. Why was youngest uncle here? Little Bald Head glanced at his stunned expression in an overbearing manner. He then turned to his third brother and began to complain. Third brother, Grandpa's son is getting more and more naggy. I wanted to go out to look for you, but he didn't allow me to. He even forbade me from eating the red-crowned cranes in the backyard. I couldn't stand this kind of oppression, so I sneaked out. Chen Liang was speechless. Wait a minute, are red-crowned cranes meant to be eaten? Different from the other reactions, Bailey Jiaoju's expression was very indifferent. He only glanced at the person behind Little Bald Head and said in an indifferent tone, the matter of 7th young master coming out, is there anyone who stayed behind to tell grandfather? Master, and she, and the rest have already informed the old master. The old master is very angry, but he specially instructed his subordinates to tell you to take good care of the young master. And Ying was dressed in black, and his whereabouts were a mystery. If it wasn't for Beligaju, he wouldn't have shown himself at all. Even if he did show up, he deliberately changed the way he addressed him. Beligaju nodded indifferently and said, you may leave. And Ying respectfully knelt on one knee and disappeared in front of the crowd in a flash. Come here. Beligaju's voice was cold as he beckoned with his finger. Little Bald Head took a bite of the meat bun and patted the dust on his body that had been on the road for the past few days. Only then did he approach Beligaju and said with a dignified expression, Third brother, stay here and break through these rocks blocking the way. Beligaju said slowly, you like to play, after you're done, I'll feed you meat. Fight. Break. Chen Liang and Da Xiong looked at each other, then simultaneously looked at the small hill in front of them. They couldn't believe it. Was this something a person could break through? Third brother, other than meat, are there any prawns? I've been wanting to eat things in the water recently. I didn't even get to eat the goldfish last time. Little Bald Head said as he raised his soft little fist and punched forward. There was a rumbling sound. The sound was too fast. Before Chen Liang and Da Xiong could react, a hole appeared on the small hill. Da Xiong looked at Chen Liang with watery eyes. His head was full of stone dust, and his expression was very messy. Chapter 472. This is too much for my pride. I can't even compare to a child. Chen Liang comforted him. Little martial uncle has always been like this, you'll get used to it. He had heard a lot of rumors when he was in the academy. As expected, little martial uncle, who could beat up all the teachers in the academy, was not someone to be trifled with. Hellion Wei Wei was looking at the surrounding mountains, thinking about the obstacle of the hillside. When she heard the noise, she walked over to take a look and saw little Seven holding a meat bun in his mouth, clenching his little fist and hitting the hillside repeatedly. After a total of 5 hits, the road was cleared. His little handsome face was very calm. Needless to say, it was obvious whose idea this was. Hellion Wei Wei glanced sideways at Bailey Jiaoju and asked with a smile, were you the one who called little Seven over? He can't stay at home. Beligaju took out a handkerchief to wipe the little one's hand and said, it's only a matter of time before he comes out. In other words, everything was going according to his plan. Hellion Wei Wei coughed softly. If Magistrate Liao and the others knew that the private advisor whom they had always looked down upon was actually so sinister and black-bellied, would they all burst into tears? However, now that the road is cleared, we can dig the soil and bury the pipes to draw the water. Hellion Vivian was in a better mood now that she had finally gotten rid of one of her worries. Father Liu was not so optimistic. Lord Wei, the position of the river is lower than that of the fields, it's impossible to bury the pipes to draw the water. Everyone knows that water flows to the lower places, how can it flow to the higher places? If it was as simple as burying the pipes to draw the water, Fuping County would not have been in a drought for 3 years. Even if the officials could not think of this method, they had done farm work all year round. Father Liu said that because he was familiar with the terrain of Fuping County. Don't worry, Father Liu, I'll solve all these problems. Hellion Vivian did not explain further. After all, the ancient people would not understand a water pump with a pneumatic device, so she only mentioned it briefly. If it was someone else who said this, Father Liu would definitely think it was a fantasy, but since it was Hellion Vivian who said it, he felt that it was reliable. However, Lord Wei, you better be careful. The people from the provincial capital will arrive tomorrow. They are here to repair the roads. When I was plowing the fields just now, I saw Private Advisor Zhong come to the fields and talk to the villagers about how to repair the roads. Old Man Liu paused for a moment before continuing. I see that quite a few of the youngsters have already believed it. They are thinking of jointly petitioning to ask why Lord Wei didn't allow them to build the road. Is it because he can't bear to part with the funds and wants to swallow the money? When Chen Liang heard this, his eyes widened. How could our boss lack money? What were the commoners thinking? There were already 2 roads in Fuping County, and it would be a waste to build another one. Moreover, they might even reap all the benefits from the construction. Wasn't the most important thing now to solve the drought? Why are those people so suspicious of boss after hearing a few words from others? Old Man Liu also felt embarrassed. He had seen what Lord Wei had done for the past 2 days. He shouldn't have been slandered like this. That Private Advisor Zhong was shameless to a certain extent. Some people who didn't know better would be fooled by him and think that they could change Fuping County's current situation by repairing the roads. Although Old Man Liu was just a farmer, he was not completely clueless. He thought for a while and looked at Hellion Vivian. Lord Wei, do you want to go to the higher-ups and ask them? If you really do come tomorrow, you won't be able to explain yourself clearly. There's nothing that can't be explained clearly, Hellion Vivian smiled. A straight foot is not afraid of a crooked shoe. Old Man Liu shook his head. Lord Wei, you are still young and don't know the ways of the world. There are some things that can be said to be black even if you are innocent. You are right, Old Man Liu. Beligaju naturally continued the conversation. He curled his lips into a smile, so handsome that even the heavens and earth seemed to lose their beauty. He wiped Hellion Vivian's hand with a handkerchief. There was a hint of mischief in his deep eyes. You have played enough. From now on, I, the private advisor, will be in charge of Fuping County's official affairs. You only need to be in charge of diverting water and irrigating the fields. Upon hearing this, the shadow guards who were standing in the dark looked at each other. They thought to themselves, His Highness finally decided to do it himself. Sigh, this group of people is really too much. Of all people to ostracize, why did they have to ostracize the princess? They will definitely be tortured to death, definitely. Hellion Vivian looked at Beligaju's side profile and felt that someone was going to be in trouble. She silently looked at the little bald head who was standing beside her. Little 7th Prince's expression was very serious. Third brother, you must take me with you when you beat people up. After that, you can treat me to meat. Hellion Vivian was speechless. I haven't settled the matter of you sneaking out. Beligaju looked at the little one condescendingly and said clearly, let's have a good talk after dinner. Little 7th Prince did not want to talk to his third brother at all. Every time they talked, he would be forced to dance naked. He could not embarrass himself outside the palace. At the thought of this, little bald head grabbed his trousers and ran to Hellion Vivian with a look that said, Third sister-in-law, please protect me. Hellion Vivian bent down and pinched the child's face. What do you want to eat for dinner? I have already asked around before coming here. Fuping County's jujubes are the best. Little bald head said very seriously. The shadow guards who followed him could not help but nod. They could testify that the little master was most concerned about the local specialties throughout the journey. Hellion Vivian could not help but laugh. She said, Jujubes can't be eaten as rice. Let's have some marinated beef, your favorite. Okay. Little seventh prince had never been a picky eater. He was happy as long as he was given food. He followed behind Hellion Vivian in a dignified manner. Chen Liang and Da Xiong were tactful enough to not accompany them. One went to the Liu family to continue protecting Liu Yin, while the other stayed in the field to keep an eye on the situation. Seeing that the night was getting darker, the 2 adults and 1 child finished their dinner and wanted to walk to digest the food. The little one was very restrained in front of his third brother. He tugged on Belegaju's sleeve and tried his best to walk with his short legs. Hellion Vivian was mesmerized by his cuteness. She turned to look at him and asked, "Are you tired?" "I'm not tired." Little seventh prince raised his head and looked at his third brother, then at Hellion Vivian. He said, "Third sister-in-law, if you are tired, you can let third brother carry you. There are no outsiders here, you can carry as much as you want." "When did I say that?" Before Hellion Vivian could finish her sentence, Belegaju carried her in his arms. From where Hellion Vivian was standing, she could only see the slight smile on the man's thin lips. Chapter 473. "So you want me to hug you?" A deep, devilish voice rang beside her ear. Hellion Wei wanted to avoid him, but he hugged her even tighter with his big hands. Belegaju's lips curled into a charming smile with a hint of mischief. "Next time you want me to hug you, you can ask me directly. I'm not an unreasonable person, I'll agree to your request." She had never seen such a cunning person who pretended to be innocent after taking advantage of her. Hellion Wei raised her eyes and glanced at him. She only felt that his handsome face was somewhat unreal. She knew that she was no match for him. In the end, she simply buried her head in the man's chest and inhaled the pleasant smell of sandalwood. Her heart felt as if it was filled with something, sour, yet incomparably sweet. However, when they reached the end of the alley, Belegaju suddenly stopped in his tracks. Xiaoqi stopped eating the meat bun. He looked up with his big eyes and stared at the night sky in the alley. In the dark, a group of people held wooden sticks and stared at Belegaju murderously. During the day, they received an order from their young master to kill him if it was inconvenient for them to beat him up. Who knew that young Master Chen would follow these 2 country bumpkins all the way back to Fuping County, making it inconvenient for them to kill him? Finally, they were alone, and there was a child beside them. If they did not kill him now, when were they going to kill him? "Kill him," the leader of the men in black ordered. With a twist of the stick, it immediately turned into a long knife and chopped towards Bailey Jiaoju's head. "How dare you provoke our young master, you must be tired of living." The man who swung the knife thought that his opponent would definitely die. Who would have thought? He had pounced on empty air. The person in front of him disappeared just like that. The leader of the men in black turned around in disbelief and saw that the person who was supposed to be standing in front of him was standing behind him. The man stood tall and straight with a person in his arms. However, his hair was not messed up in the slightest. He was noble and elegant like a god who had just walked out of the moon. His eyes were so deep and cold that anyone who saw them couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. At first, the man in black was a little scared. Later, when he thought of their background, he couldn't help but snort. It was just a bluff. They made it seem like they were very powerful. He sneered and exchanged glances with the person behind Belegaju, signaling him to prepare for a sneak attack. His face was still full of disdain as he said, "If I were you, I would apologize to my young master right now. Why didn't you ask around about my young master's influence in Fuping County? He's just a small county magistrate. Do you think you can win?" "Oh, a little county magistrate?" Belegaju walked towards him with a faint smile. The sneak attacker saw that the opportunity was right and raised the knife to stab him in the back. At that moment, the black-clothed leader only saw a black shadow flash before his eyes, and the knife pierced right into his left arm. Belegaju, who was supposed to be stabbed to death, stood there unscathed. His aura did not diminish at all. The pain swept over him like a violent storm. The man in black was in so much pain that he immediately squatted on the ground. Looking at the unscathed Belegaju, other than fear surging out from the depths of his heart, there was only fear. Who the hell was this guy? His martial chi, I can't even feel it, let alone predict how powerful he is. Even if all of them joined forces, they might not be able to defeat him. At the thought of this, the man in black's face turned pale. He supported himself on the ground with one hand and looked at Beligaju, who was slowly walking towards him. His eyes were filled with panic. Stop. Someone wanted to pull the little one over, but found that he couldn't even move a child. So, he simply pulled out a dagger and pressed it against the little one's neck. If you take another step forward, I'll kill him. Indeed, Bailey Jiaju also stopped in his tracks. However, the gaze he used to look at that person was filled with obvious ridicule. With a smile that was not a smile, his good-looking thin lips slightly opened. Idiot. These two simple words successfully enraged the man holding the dagger. You don't believe that I'll do it, right? I'll cut him now and show you. As he spoke, the man wanted to raise the dagger. Unexpectedly, as soon as he raised his hand, he was punched hard in the stomach. Bang! That person was sent flying high into the air before crashing heavily onto the ground. Puff! Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The man in black couldn't believe his eyes. What did he just see? A 4-year-old child had actually sent his most powerful subordinate flying. In an instant, all the men in black's expressions changed. Their first reaction was to escape. But it was all too late. No one who provoked the royal family could escape unscathed. After a series of crackling sounds were heard, Bailey Jiaju leisurely wiped his hands. His left foot stepped on the back of the black-clothed leader's hand. Standing against the light, his expression couldn't be seen clearly, but that pair of long and narrow eyes overflowed with the color of blood. Hellion Vivian walked forward and touched his cold fingers. Beligaju then withdrew his hostility and looked back at her. What's wrong? It's cold. Hellion Vivian smiled faintly and held his hand, interlocking their fingers. Then, she instructed the little one, Little Seven, I'll leave these people to you. Let them stand in a line and send them to the Yamen prison. They can be used in the future. Assassinating an official of the imperial court is a crime that Lord Liao can't bear even if he wants to. The little one hummed in agreement and used his foot to pick up a wooden stick. Whoever stood in the wrong place would be in a daze for a long time without any nonsense. The black-clothed leader, whose face was bruised and swollen, dragged his aching arm and vaguely realized that something seemed to have gone wrong. The other party was too different from what they had imagined. Did he really have no background with such good skills? Just as the leader in black was puzzled, Master Liao arrived at Fuping County. He began to complain when he saw Magistrate Liao. He didn't mention a word about how he sent people to trouble Hellion Vivian. Father, you don't know how arrogant the new county magistrate is. I was having a meal in the provincial capital, but he went to visit me. Not only did he hurt me, but he also asked me to compensate him with a lot of silver. Magistrate Liao had always wanted to mess with Hellion Vivian. Now that he heard his son's words, the gloominess in his eyes deepened. Doesn't he know who you are? I told him my name and father on the spot, but that person didn't take my father seriously at all. He made me lose face in the provincial capital. Magistrate Liao clenched the teacup in his hand tighter as he listened. This Wei guy, I'll skin him alive tomorrow. Chapter 474. Father, you must make sure that he dies without a burial place. Young Master Liao was so focused on watching his enemy make a fool of himself that he forgot to tell Magistrate Liao that Hellion Vivian and Chen Liang knew each other. Magistrate Liao, who knew nothing, did not know that while he was thinking of ways to get rid of the person in front of him, his son had already created a huge mess for him behind his back. On the other hand, Private Advisor Zhong came to show his loyalty as soon as he heard that young Master Liao was here with money. Magistrate Liao could not be bothered to look at his fawning face. He only asked, "What did that Wei fellow do today? I heard that the village is abuzz with news. It's all because of that Wei fellow who did something stupid again." Private Advisor Zhong was in high spirits as he spoke. His face was filled with disdain as he gloated, "This person is just too inexperienced." He didn't even take a look at the terrain of Fuping County before thinking of burying a pipe to divert water. What a fool's dream. Magistrate Liao laughed when he heard this. Planting pipes to divert water? Everyone knows that the terrain of the river is lower than the farmland. The water will not flow to higher places. Lord Wei must have lost his mind because of our pressure. I don't think that Wei fellow is that kind. He must have gone crazy from wanting to achieve good results. That's why he came up with such a trick. Private Advisor Zhong chuckled, that's even better. When the people from the provincial capital arrive tomorrow, let's see how that Wei fellow is going to deal with this. Magistrate Liao did not speak anymore. He lowered his head and took a sip of tea. However, the smile on his face was extremely vicious. In the officialdom, this was the best way to get rid of someone completely. Only the people would believe the words of the people. Don't blame him for being ruthless. That Wei fellow should be blamed for thinking too highly of himself. He did not listen to anyone and deserved to die without a burial place. Night fell at the county magistrate's yamen. Bailey Jiaoju looked at the letter sent by the shadow guards and the corners of his mouth curved into an arc. This is not enough. Drag the one in the capital down as well. Yes. The shadow guard lowered his eyes respectfully, but he couldn't help but be shocked by his master's means. No one could have imagined that even though Fuping was far away, the situation in the capital city was still under His Highness' control. Fuping's scheme was spreading like wildfire throughout the province, but none of the people involved were aware of the danger. The shadow guard turned back to take a look at his master, only to see Belegaju's slender and transparent fingers holding a black chess piece. With a crisp sound, it landed on the jade chessboard. Sitting behind the scenes and giving pointers to the world was probably referring to this scene. Hellion Vivian was smoking her hair. When Belegaju finished his work and walked in, she was already a little sleepy. Her eyes were closed, and her eyelashes were very long. Belegaju lowered his eyes and looked at her for a while. Then, he bent down, picked her up, and placed her on the bed. When he let go of her, Hellion Vivian woke up. Belegaju kissed the corner of her eyes and said with a unique magnetic voice, "It's okay. Go back to sleep." Hellion Vivian was still tied up, so when she heard his words, she closed her eyes again. Under the moonlight, Belegaju held her in his arms. His figure was slender, and his black hair was scattered around him. He was indescribably gentle. The next day, when Hellion Vivian woke up, she saw that noble and flawless face. She wanted to move, but he reached out and pressed her back. Sleep for a while more. Belegaju closed his eyes, and his voice was hoarse, which was not usually there. Hellion Vivian looked outside and said, "No, I have to get up and check on my water pump. With the shadow guards around, no one will dare to come near." Bailey Jiaoju knew that this little thing that he was raising would sometimes be restless, so he directly pressed down on her claws and slid his left hand under her clothes. Hellion Vivian's body went soft, and she fell back on his chest. Her ears were a little red, and she bit her thin lips. Her voice was a little shaky, "Not here." After all, the yamen was an important place to handle cases. Someone could come in at any time. Moreover, with her current identity, it was inevitable that someone would come to look for her early in the morning. Belegaju also knew that this place was not right, so he did not really want to do anything to her. After hugging her back, he fell into a light sleep again. The two of them rested for less than half an hour before a servant knocked on the door. "Lord Wei, Lord Wei." Hellion Vivian tidied up her clothes, put on a coat, and opened the door. "What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry?" The servant hurriedly said, "The people from the provincial capital are here." Magistrate Liao asked all the county magistrates to get up early and gather at Yang Manor. "Go to Yang Manor?" Hellion Vivian's fingers that were tying the coat paused, and the corner of her mouth lifted. "I know. You can leave first." The servant lowered his eyes and said yes. He vaguely saw the figure of Private Advisor Long in the room, and couldn't help muttering, "This Private Advisor Long's relationship with Lord Wei is really good." He came to wait in Lord Wei's room so early in the morning. Belegaju listened calmly. He reached out his hand from behind and took over the work of tying the coat from Hellion Vivian. "As a qualified private advisor, this kind of thing should be done by me." The two of them were facing the bronze mirror, and their breaths were right beside her ears. Hellion Vivian only felt numb everywhere, and she couldn't move. If she touched anything, it would definitely delay time. His Highness finally finished tying her coat, and there was a deep smile on his thin lips. "Look at your expression. It's as if you're upset. Why didn't you continue?" Hellion Vivian. Since when was she upset? His Highness's imagination was too strong, and they were never on the same wavelength. I'll make it up to you when we return to the palace. Beligaju leaned over and kissed her ear, and the tip of his tongue brushed over it intentionally. Hellion Vivian suddenly trembled, and her whole body shrank into his arms like a shrimp that had been electrocuted. Bailey Jiu curled his lips playfully. Throw yourself into my arms. Hellion Wei looked at his mischievous smile and her heart trembled. The sweetness in her heart swelled even more. Perhaps this was the feeling of liking someone more and more. Even though she knew that this person was shameless to the point of being arrogant, as long as she saw that pair of smiling eyes, she would also smile along with him. After breakfast, several officials from the provincial capital walked into Yang Manor, accompanied by the county magistrates. Magistrate Liao seemed to be showing off his network of connections. Along the way, he was talking and laughing with the officials from the provincial capital. This made the people who supported the road construction see a lot of hope, and they started to talk about it all at once. Liu Rin and Old Man Liu listened attentively, and their eyes fell on Hellion Vivian from afar, and they couldn't help but worry. Chapter 475. Hellion Vivian's expression did not change at all. She acted as if she did not see the friendly atmosphere between Magistrate Liao and the people from the provincial capital. It was as if she did not care who came. She was neither happy nor sad. Private Advisor Zhong pursed his lips and sneered in disdain. What a pretentious person. In his opinion, Wei Liao was really stupid. The people from the provincial capital were here, but he was still putting on airs. He did not even know how to liven up the atmosphere. He deserved it. Hellion Vivian did not put on airs, but she did not curry favor with the higher-ups like the other county magistrates. She was neither servile nor overbearing, but she did not lose her manners. As soon as the officials from the provincial capital sat down, they said straightforwardly, "The Imperial Court has sent us the funds. We heard that the roads in Fuping County are going to be built. How do you plan to do it?" "We'll do it the same way we did in the past." Magistrate Liao held his teacup and said with a smile, "It's best to build the roads directly into the village. It will save the people the trouble of entering the city." The officials nodded and said, "Fuping County is a big place and has a lot of resources. It's a good thing to build a few more roads. If the people can travel more comfortably, it will be a good thing." They then asked the county magistrates, "What about you? Do you have any opinions?" How could the county magistrates have any opinions? Of course, all of them agreed that the roads were good. They spoke as if they wanted to offend Magistrate Liao. In fact, Hellion Vivian, who had the most right to speak, was drinking her tea with a calm expression from the beginning to the end. After they finished talking, she put down the teacup in her hand and said with a clear voice, "I don't think the roads are a good thing." Magistrate Liao's smiling face suddenly darkened. He turned his head and looked at Hellion Vivian. The officials from the provincial capital looked at each other and frowned. "Tell us your reason." "There are already 2 roads in Fuping County that lead out of the village. Both of them lead directly to the provincial capital. There's no need to build another road." Hellion Vivian's voice was calm, but her words hit the nail on the head. Magistrate Liao laughed softly and said, "Lord Wei, you've just entered the officialdom. You don't understand what the roads mean to the people. Where are the roads not being repaired now? If we want the people to become wealthy, we have to be in line with the provincial capital. Otherwise, Fuping County will face poverty and backwardness. We made this decision after comprehensive consideration." Then I would like to ask, when Lord Liao made this decision, did you ever consider that there are fields everywhere in Fuping County? If you want to build roads, you have to occupy the fields. The people rely on the fields to make a living. Without the fields, what are they going to eat? Hellion Vivian asked slowly. Magistrate Liao's eyes darkened. Then, he laughed out loud. "Lord Wei, that's a good question. In the beginning, we were also worried about this problem. After that, we thought about it again. We have to pay for everything we do. When the road is repaired and it's time for the harvest, the people will be able to earn back all the losses. If it really doesn't work, we still have disaster relief food in the warehouse. We can use it when the time comes. Lord Liao, you seem to have forgotten that 2 days ago, You gave the only relief food in the warehouse to Private Advisor Zhong and asked him to sell it. How are you going to distribute it to the people when they are in trouble? Hellion Vivian put down the teacup in her hand and went straight to the point. Magistrate Liao laughed coldly when he heard that. Lord Wei, are you saying that you don't agree with the road being repaired? Have you ever thought about what the people of Fuping County are missing out on because of your hasty decision? As if in response to Magistrate Liao's words, a commotion suddenly came from afar. We want to see Lord Wei. We want to see Lord Wei. Naturally, such a commotion was heard. A few officials from the provincial capital looked at each other and asked the people below with suspicion, what's going on outside? My lords, a few farmers are making a ruckus. They want to see Lord Wei. It seems like they want to question him about something. This was Private Advisor Zhong's reply. The expression on his face made everyone want to know what was going on. Hellion Vivian watched the exchange of glances between him and Magistrate Liao. Her slender fingers tapped on the table, but she did not say anything. One of the officials from the provincial capital spoke, let the villagers in. We want to hear what the people want to ask Lord Wei. Yes. Private Advisor Zhong lowered his head and accepted the order. A crafty smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. After a while, he walked in with a few farmers. It was obvious that the people had never seen so many officials before. Their expressions were somewhat fearful. Private Advisor Zhong lowered his voice and spoke in a friendly manner that he had never shown before, don't be afraid. Just say whatever you want to say. All of them are from the provincial capital. They will definitely stand up for us. After hearing this, someone mustered up the courage to shout, I want to see Lord Wei. Where is the new Fuping County Magistrate? The officials from the provincial capital saw that the farmers were so emotional. When they looked at Hellion Vivian again, they had a subtle and probing look. Magistrate Liao lowered his head and took a sip of tea. However, he could not hide the crafty smile at the corner of his mouth. Hellion Vivian was unexpectedly calm. She stood up calmly and said in a calm voice, I am the new Fuping County Magistrate. You are the corrupt official who is stopping us from getting rich. Before Hellion Vivian could finish her sentence, the young man shouted loudly, why didn't you ask Magistrate Liao to build the road? You said that it was for the good of the people by cutting off our opportunity to connect to the provincial capital. However, you are using money to build pipes to divert water. Everyone knows that the water level of the river in Fuping County is lower than the farmland. It is impossible to use this method to irrigate the farmland. It is fine if you are the one who did it, but why did you have to invest the funds for building the road to prevent us from escaping poverty and becoming rich? Wei, you are the most shameless corrupt official I have ever seen. After being scolded, Hellion Wei did not get angry. Instead, she asked in a calm and unsteady voice, only a few of us know about the Imperial Court's allocation of funds. Big brother, where did you hear the news? The man looked at Private Advisor Zhong unconsciously. Private Advisor Zhong coughed loudly. The man said loudly, why do you care where I heard it from? You are now trying to stop the road from being built because of your own selfish desires. This is the truth. Lord Wei, you really should give us a proper explanation on this issue. The officials from the provincial capital heard the farmer's words and turned to look at Hellion Vivian. Their faces were stern, which was not seen earlier. The Imperial Court will never tolerate and nurture a traitor. They will use a huge amount of salary to support a corrupt official who is harming the people. Chapter 476. In the face of such accusations, Hellion Vivian was very calm. She did not fly into a rage like Magistrate Liao had expected. Instead, she said slowly, the lords are right. Since the villagers have asked, why don't we have a good talk? As she spoke, she looked at the farmers. How can the villagers be so sure that they can make a fortune by fixing the road? The farmers looked at each other and could not help but look at Private Advisor Zhong. Hellion Vivian smiled. The villagers are always looking at Private Advisor Zhong because you have a good idea. I'll have to ask you then. The second drought after autumn is coming in 7 days. Once the drought comes, there will be no harvest in the fields. If there is no harvest, there will be no food to export. Without export, how can we make a fortune? What's the point of fixing the road? Private Advisor Zhong was at a loss for words after being bombarded by Hellion Vivian's questions. He opened his mouth to explain but realized that he could not say anything. It seems that Private Advisor Zhong doesn't know either. Hellion Vivian continued smiling, then I'm puzzled. How can the villagers be so sure about something that no lord can guarantee? The ancient times were different from the modern times. The villagers were afraid when they met the officials. Now that Hellion Vivian had mentioned it, they were afraid. The farmers were afraid that they would be condemned. They stammered, yes, it was Private Advisor Zhong who promised us. He said that as long as the road is fixed, we can make a fortune. As soon as they said that, the officials from the provincial capital fell silent. It was obvious that Private Advisor Zhong had made up some rumors. Moreover, the most urgent problem in Fuping County was not fixing the road, but the worrisome drought. However, Private Advisor Zhong did not even mention it. Instead, he kept talking about fixing the road. If the time came and there was no harvest due to the drought, everyone in Fuping County would have to flee. How could they make any money? When the time came, not only would the imperial court blame them, the retired emperor might even punish them for it. Initially, they came here to make some money. However, they were willing to take the money if it was not dangerous. If it was too much, no one wanted to bear the consequences. Private Advisor Zhong, you're in the wrong this time, said an official. Hearing this, the rest of the people looked at Private Advisor Zhong. Private Advisor Zhong did not expect this to happen. He tried his best to maintain the stiff smile on his face. I'm just worried about the people. However, now that things had come to this, no one would believe him anymore. Even the commoners who were brought in by him began to understand what was going on. They glared at Private Advisor Zhong fiercely. Among them, an old man who was more knowledgeable said, "Are you using us? Speak." "I." Private Advisor Zhong's expression darkened. "My fellow countrymen, please don't make false accusations. All of you came here willingly. How can you say that I'm using you? I didn't say anything." Magistrate Liao listened to his useless explanation and cursed him for being an idiot in his heart. His expression darkened. Basically, everyone knew that Private Advisor Zhong was his man. Private Advisor Zhong's mistake was equivalent to a slap to his face. This Wei guy knew about it, but he still played such a trick on him. Good, very good. Magistrate Liao rolled his eyes and chuckled. Let's put the matter of road construction aside for now. Lord Wei, I think you have misunderstood the meaning of the questions that the villagers asked you. What they want to know is, why did you spend so much money to bury pipes and divert water when the water in Fuping County is so high and the fields are so high? It's such a waste of manpower and money, and it's so fruitless. Yes, that's what I mean. Private Advisor Zhong could not help but chimed in. According to Lord Wei, fixing the road will destroy the fields. If we have to bury pipes and divert water through the fields will be destroyed before the water comes. Wouldn't the people still lose their food? Magistrate Liao took a sip of his tea and said, Private Advisor Zhong, Lord Wei is a newcomer who has just been appointed. We can understand that he wants to achieve good results. However, understanding is one thing, allowing it is another. You don't have to be anxious. If anything happens, you can explain it slowly. This will prevent the officials in the provincial capital from misunderstanding you. I'm worried about the people. Private Advisor Zhong put on a pained expression and said emotionally, after fixing the road, the people in Fuping County can still get relief food from the provincial capital even if they don't have any food. Burying pipes and diverting water is just a waste of money. What effect will it have? Hellion Vivian sneered, Private Advisor Zhong hasn't seen whether it's effective or not. How can you come to a conclusion? Magistrate Liao waved his hand, Lord Wei, let's stop arguing. Let's go to the fields and have a look. We can let the people from the provincial capital be our witnesses. This Wei guy, if I don't slap him in the face, he won't be convinced. He knew Fuping County very well. No matter how the water in the river flowed, it would never flow to the fields on high ground. Let's listen to Lord Liao and have a look at the fields. The official from the provincial capital spoke. He was still very kind to the people. Let's follow along. We can explain to Lord Wei when the time comes. When the crowd heard this, they burst into laughter. They looked at Helly and Vivian with obvious mockery. The farmers didn't know who to listen to. They only vaguely felt that they shouldn't have come to find Sir Wei. However, now that things had come to this, there was no room for them to regret. They braced themselves and followed the group of officials to the fields. Magistrate Liao said that it was a field, but intentionally or unintentionally, he led the people to the riverside. He wanted to show the officials in the provincial capital how low the terrain was. The officials said casually as they walked, "Lord Wei, sometimes you need to use your brain. How can the water flow to the fields when the river is so low?" Helly and Vivian's thin lips curled into a mocking smile. Before she could say anything, the sound of water flowing could be heard not far away. It was accompanied by the cheers of a few farmers. It caused quite a commotion. "Water! There's water!" The officials paused and looked toward the source of the sound. They saw a handsome and indifferent figure standing in the vast sky. He was tall and his long robe was slightly fluttering. He looked like a god from ancient times. His slender hands were covered with pure black gloves. His thin lips were curled into a faint smile. There was a cold light in his deep eyes. It was difficult to ignore the oppressive aura he exuded. Even if he was standing in a crowd, he would be recognized at first glance. Helly and Vivian was stunned for a moment. Then, her lips curled into a smile. "His Highness has been missing since this morning. He was waiting here." Chapter 477. What's going on? The officials asked in confusion. The servant ran back and forth, his eyes filled with disbelief. "My lords, please go and take a look. There's water over there. There's water." Everyone knew that Fuping County lacked water the most. "There's water in the fields. Where did it come from?" The officials walked over doubtfully, only to see a bamboo pipe with a steady flow of water. The other end of the bamboo pipe seemed to be connected to the river at the lowest point of the terrain. How could this be? Everyone's faces were filled with unguarded astonishment. The few farmers who followed him couldn't believe what they were seeing. Their eyes were wet with excitement. Where did the water come from? Happiness came so suddenly that the villagers were trembling. "It's Private Advisor Long who serves Lord Wei," someone shouted. "He asked someone to bury the pipe and finally attracted the water from the river." "Private Advisor Long who serves Lord Wei? Isn't that Lord Wei's idea?" The crowd turned around and looked at Helly and Vivian. Some were impressed, some were stunned, and some were embarrassed. The embarrassed one was Magistrate Liao's old face. He came to the fields with the intention of humiliating Wei. But the result? He actually let him be in the limelight just like that. He was the one who was embarrassed. When he met the gazes of his colleagues, Magistrate Liao wished he could find a hole and bury himself in it. He only wanted to leave as soon as possible. However, there was no such thing as a free lunch in the world. Especially in His Highness's territory. How could they run away after bullying his people? They should ask if he was willing to do so. An eye for an eye had always been His Highness's style. The elders in the capital city were most afraid of his methods. The people in the provincial capital were not aware of Belegaju's identity. If they knew that he was here, they would not interfere in Fuping County's affairs no matter how much benefits Magistrate Liao offered them. "There are too many people here. Let's not let these unruly people hurt you, my lords. Let's go back." Old Master Yang immediately jumped out when he saw the situation. He wanted to help Magistrate Liao out of the situation. Unexpectedly, as soon as he spoke, he heard an angry roar with a local accent. "We became unruly because of you, you shameless bastard. You. Where did you come from? I don't even know you. Don't slander me." Old Master Yang shouted. Old Man Liu couldn't take it anymore. He threw away the hoe in his hand. "Yang, for so many years, you colluded with Magistrate Liao and did so many dirty things behind our backs. You wanted to make money, so you encouraged us to build roads. Many roads in Fuping County, big and small, had been repaired in just 3 years, but our lives were getting worse and worse. Putting aside the fact that you can do whatever you want in Fuping County, if you take a fancy to a girl, we have to send her to your residence. Otherwise, Our whole family will not be at peace. Do you think that there is no law in this world? Old Master Yang looked at the gazes that were directed at him from all directions. He suddenly felt as if there was a knife on his back. He couldn't help but take a step back. He stuck out his big belly and pointed at Old Man Liu in warning, "Don't talk nonsense. I marry someone willingly. How can you not recognize me after accepting the money? You have accepted the monetary gift, but now you are saying that I will cause your whole family to be at peace. You took the money and did something immoral. Sirs, you have to help me." Old Man Liu didn't expect the other party to be so thick-skinned. When he heard the words monetary gift, he was so angry that his eyes turned red. "Our family doesn't want your money at all. Do you think you are buying livestock? One tail? Was this a betrothal gift?" This was simply a humiliation. The few officials present had different expressions on their faces. Some of them thought that this old Master Yang was too incompetent. If he really took a fancy to someone, he could have just given them more money. Why did he have to make things so ugly? Old Master Yang explained, "Isn't it because you think it's too little? That's fine, I'll make it up to you. Why do you have to bite me? Old Man Liu, let me tell you, I'm not a pushover. I won't let you accuse me like this. You." Old Man Liu was so angry that his face turned green. Old Master Yang was still pretending to be righteous and said, "Some people have been poor for too long. Not only did I help them, but they also want to take advantage of me. I can understand that and I don't want to argue with these people. However, they are slandering me everywhere. Old Man Liu, you have to be responsible for your words." Bang! Before Old Master Yang could finish his words, Hellion Vivian, who had been silent all this while, raised her leg and kicked Old Master Yang's chest fiercely. After the first kick was not enough, she gave him a second kick. Old Master Yang was still puffing out his chest and pretending to be rich. After being kicked, he curled up into a ball in pain. All the officials were shocked by Hellion Vivian's sudden action. They did not expect Hellion Vivian to take action. Magistrate Liao, in particular, flew into a rage instantly. He shouted at Hellion Vivian, "Lord Wei, what are you doing? Do you know who you're hitting? You're hitting the person who can help Fuping County out of poverty the most. The person who can help Fuping County out of poverty." Hellion Vivian looked at Magistrate Liao with a mocking gaze. She slowly grabbed Old Master Yang's collar and said, "I've seen many despicable people, but this is the first time I've seen someone as despicable as him. He only gave me one tael of silver and said that he gave a betrothal gift. He even said that he helped this and that. Almost all the good girls in Fuping County are ruined by you. You're just a beast in human skin, yet you're still taking credit for it. Old Master Yang, you better give me an explanation now. What right do you have to harass the Liu family again and again and let 3 big men hit a girl?" Old Master Yang was already confused by Hellion Vivian's 2 kicks. He felt pain all over his body and looked at Magistrate Liao with blood at the corner of his mouth. Magistrate Liao wanted to help him out. Suddenly, someone among the crowd shouted, "We want Old Master Yang to give us an explanation. He knows how many despicable things he has done all these years." Old Master Yang was enraged by the crowd. He could not help but reveal his true nature. He was extremely arrogant. "I sleep with people and pay for them. What do I need to explain? I can't stand people like you. Whenever there's a problem, you'll find fault with my personal behavior. I don't kill people, nor did I commit arson. I'm just doing my business honestly. It's not a crime at all. Lord Wei, you better think about the consequences of kicking me like this." "Consequences?" Hellion Vivian smiled coldly. "Old Master Yang, are you threatening me? Old Master Yang, you have the guts to threaten me, an official of the Imperial Court, in front of all the officials from the provincial capital. Who gave you such courage?" Chapter 478. Magistrate Liao wished that he did not know Old Master Yang at all. However, everyone in Fuping County, including the villagers, knew that Magistrate Liao and Old Master Yang were in the same boat. Who else could it be? Of course, it's Magistrate Liao. If it wasn't for Magistrate Liao, how could he be so fearless? Officials and businessmen protect each other. In the end, The people are the ones who suffer. The villagers were getting more and more agitated as they spoke, especially a few old farmers. They looked at Old Master Yang and Magistrate Liao as if they were looking at their enemies. With a face full of anger, they rushed forward in large strides and surrounded the two people in the center, interrogating them for a long time. The Yamen runners who were in charge of rescuing Magistrate Liao were blocked by Da Xiong and could not enter the field. For a moment, the entire field was in chaos. Voices cursing Magistrate Liao and Old Master Yang could be heard everywhere. It was obvious who was the one who had truly aroused the anger of the people. This is totally unreasonable. The officials from the provincial capital also realized that Magistrate Liao had gone too far and there was no way to clean up the mess. They could not help but feel conflicted with him. They thought that they could get some offerings in Fuping County. After all, the higher-ups of the Liao family were not to be underestimated. Who would have thought that this would happen? The people were looking at them as if they were watching a show. Every one of them was a person with a high status in the provincial capital. They had never been ridiculed like this before. This series of actions was simply insulting them. Helian Wei stood at the side and watched this farce. The corners of her mouth had long been curled into a smile. When she glanced sideways, she saw the man's thin lips curling up mischievously, with a meaningful black-bellied flavor. Handsome is handsome, but too dangerous. How did you come up with this idea? Helian Vivian lowered her voice and whispered to her private advisor. Bailey Jiu glanced at her. If it were not for the occasion, he would have pulled her into his arms and rubbed her fluffy head. He was very fond of this little thing who came over to talk to him like this. Belagaju breathed gently in her ear, deliberately teasing her. When you were begging for mercy on the bed, I always had to think of something to distract myself. Otherwise, how could I control myself from wanting you? Helian Wei was choked by the man's words. Her ears were somewhat numb and she lightly coughed a few times. She was very glad that she knew what was good for her from the start and took a fancy to a certain highness. Otherwise, she really would have died without leaving behind a corpse. Just look at these officials. Until now, they still didn't know who they had offended to end up like this. They were really stupid. Lord Wei, why are you still in a daze? Hurry up and pull these unruly people away. Magistrate Liao couldn't take it anymore and started yelling. His hair was messed up and he was in an extremely sorry state. He wanted to use his authority to suppress the people, but these people were simply crazy. The moment he opened his mouth, they would choke him back with words. They pointed at him and scolded him. He couldn't suppress them no matter how hard he tried. Helian Vivian's voice was calm. Magistrate Liao, it's better for you to answer the questions asked by the people properly. I'm not of much use anyway. The more the officials from the provincial capital looked at them, the more they felt embarrassed. Now that they heard Helian Vivian's words, they simply flicked their sleeves and walked back. When they were leaving, they did not forget to yell at the Yamen runners in a low voice, remember to bring your lord to the Yamen. This is too much. Yes. The Yamen runners hurriedly responded. When Magistrate Liao saw the situation, he knew that he had to make a decision. He turned around and glared at Old Master Yang fiercely. Look at what you've done. Lord Liao, I don't know how things turned out like this. These unruly people are simply courting death. How dare they make such a scene? Old Master Yang was used to calling the shots in Fuping County. His first reaction was to get angry. He thought that when he left this field, he would definitely find all the people who scolded him today and teach them a lesson. He did not listen to Magistrate Liao's words and did not see that the officials from the provincial capital had already left. Magistrate Liao had never thought that Old Master Yang was stupid before. Now, other than the word stupid, he really could not think of another word to describe him. A huge sense of regret welled up in his heart. Why did he have to deal with such a person? Now, he had dragged him down and made him lose face in front of the officials from the provincial capital. It would take him a lot of effort to repair it in the future. How could an official be scolded by the people? This was simply a joke. He did not know how he would be laughed at in the capital in the future. This incident would probably be a shadow for him for the rest of his life. He must find a way to get rid of this. When he thought of this, Magistrate Liao shouted loudly, "Guards, take Old Master Yang away." "Lord Liao." Old Master Yang was stunned, as if he could not believe what he heard. He stared blankly at Magistrate Liao, who gave the order. He only reacted when a Yamen runner came over and held his back. He shouted at Magistrate Liao, "Lord Liao, you can't do this. We are in the same boat, Lord Liao." Magistrate Liao was not in the mood to care about what he said now. Since he could not suppress him, he might as well pretend that he did not hear it. "Take him away." Magistrate Liao's hair and clothes were messy. He did not look like a magistrate at all. He could not even muster up any strength. If it were not for his pair of eyes that were too vicious, the people would have forgotten his identity. Beligaju was standing beside him. His voice was neither fast nor slow. "Lord Liao, didn't you hear what Old Master Yang said? He said that you are in the same boat. If you are dragged away by the Yamen runners, Lord Liao, are you putting righteousness before family?" Magistrate Liao was already in a bad mood. Now that he heard such words, he was so angry that his eyes turned red. He patted his chest breathlessly, but he could not do anything in front of the crowd. He could only clench his teeth and say, "Let's go." The Yamen runners hurriedly protected him. They reached out and pushed away the villagers who kept swarming toward them. They fled out of the fields. It was completely different from when they were facing Magistrate Liao. When the people looked at Hellion Vivian, their eyes were full of admiration. "Lord Wei, how did you do it? You are really a god. You can actually draw the water from the river and use it to irrigate the field." Hellion Vivian smiled gently. "I just added a few small devices." "What devices are they?" "They are so amazing." Hellion Vivian hummed. "It is a little complicated to explain. If you want to know, you can ask the master who made the devices. They will tell you. With such a device, Fuping County will never have to worry about drought in the future." Endless praises echoed in the air above the fields. This was Hellion Vivian's first battle in the officialdom since she came to Fuping County. She fought it beautifully. However, this was just the beginning. Chapter 479. The situation in Fuping County had obviously changed. Magistrate Liao did not know when it started, but he was already deeply involved in this storm when he finally realized what was going on. The officials who once supported the road construction were like headless flies. They sat in the Yamen and tried their best to find out what was going on in the provincial capital, trying to find a breakthrough. Among them, Private Advisor Zhong was the most active. He was the closest to Old Master Yang. Now that Old Master Yang was in trouble, he would definitely be involved. Moreover, the news had spread among the people that he had been covering for Old Master Yang all these years as a private advisor in the Yamen. He was no different from a pimp. "Lord Liao, we have to think of a way. We can't just sit here and wait for our doom." Private Advisor Zhong wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. "There are many people outside the Yamen. They are forcing us to give them an explanation now. Fortunately, the officials from the provincial capital still remember our past relationship and did not submit a report to the higher-ups. If the higher-ups know about this, we will be in trouble." Magistrate Liao had already thought of the situation that Private Advisor Zhong mentioned, but it was one thing to think about it and another to turn it around. "We have to shut the Liu family up first, then there will be a turn for the better." Magistrate Liao instructed Private Advisor Zhong in a low voice, "This case is easy, don't panic. Don't forget that the officials from the provincial capital are here to stabilize the situation for us. If they don't say anything, who dares to react to it? Even if the news really reaches the capital, there is still that person in charge. That Wei person has no say in the provincial capital, let alone in the capital. He is not even worth a fart. He thinks he is so great just because he made some achievements, and now he wants to go against us. Heh." Magistrate Liao sneered with a sinister look on his face. "The situation in the officialdom is not something that can be changed just by the people making a fuss. What's next is the most important part. Go and get some money. No matter how much you have to spend, you have to force the Liu family to change their mouths. As long as their words are no longer valid, that Wei family will have to suffer a severe fall as well." "Yes. I'll get it done right away." Private Advisor Zhong nodded his head vigorously, but before he could take a step forward, a voice rang out. Master Liao walked in angrily with a look of satisfaction on his face. Father, not only did that Wei fellow capture my people, he even tortured all of them in private. Now that I can't contact them, you must help me find them. Torture in private? Magistrate Liao's eyes flickered as he came up with a plan. You'll go to court with me later. We'll complain about Wei in front of the provincial officials. Young Master Liao was a little dumb and could not wrap his head around it. Will this work? Father, wouldn't it be better to just ask him to release them and then dismiss him from his position? How many times have I said it? That is an official appointed by the imperial court. No matter how much power your father has, I can't just dismiss anyone as I please. Magistrate Liao was infuriated by his son who only knew how to eat, drink, and play all day long. I'll ask Private Advisor Zhong to teach you what to say in the imperial court later. He has plenty of ways to deal with this kind of thing. All right. Young Master Liao's face turned gloomy after being scolded. It was not so troublesome in the past. He would kill anyone who offended him directly. What was the point of going to the imperial court? How frustrating. Private Advisor Zhong was a man of many thoughts. He could see through Master Liao's mind at a glance. Young Master, don't underestimate this complaint of yours. The Lord has already said that the officials in the provincial capital are all well prepared. If it weren't for the chaos, not only would your complaint be able to get rid of that Wei guy, it might even send him to prison and never let him out for the rest of his life. Really? Young Master Liao's dejected expression changed. His eyes lit up all of a sudden. Private Advisor Zhong did not know that young Master Liao had sent people to kill Hellion Vivian. He only heard young Master Liao's side of the story. He wanted to kill Hellion Vivian so badly, but he did not ask for more details. He said with certainty, with the Lord around, we can also turn the innocent into a criminal. What Private Advisor Zhong said was not wrong. After all, the provincial officials did not want to return empty-handed. As for Hellion Vivian's behavior, they could not stand it. They were originally here to enjoy life, but who knew that they would be humiliated in front of so many people? Who would have thought that they would lose face in front of so many people? No one would be happy about it. Moreover, with their relationship with Magistrate Liao, they already had their own plans for what they should do next. However, at this moment, the lost governor of 3 provinces, Lord Chen, finally arrived at the boundary of Fuping County. His servant kept apologizing to him along the way. Lord Chen was very anxious, but he did not show it on his face. He was afraid that something bad would happen, so he went to the local garrison camp before he came and showed the letter in his hand to one of the Emperor Emeritus's trusted aides. When the trusted aide received the letter, his expression changed, but he also gave him a confirmation that Highness has indeed come to our province. This is also the Emperor Emeritus's intention. With just a few words, Lord Chen could tell that there was a change in the imperial court. That Highness's methods had always been dreadful. It was obvious why he came to Fuping County this time. He was attacking from the outside. His goal was not as simple as Fuping County. It was obvious that he wanted to eliminate the hidden forces of the entire province in one move. Lord Chen shuddered. He looked at the Fuping Yamen in front of him. When he thought of the officials who came to Fuping County for inspection, including his former subordinates, he could only feel a chill running down his spine. He hoped that they could recognize Liangzi from beside His Highness and not cross the line. Achoo! Chen Liang, who was following beside Hellion Vivian, sneezed loudly. He looked at his boss with grievance. Why? Why didn't you let me go to the field with you? I heard from Da Xiong that you're very cool. He felt relieved just hearing about it, let alone seeing it on the spot. What exactly did he miss? Hellion Vivian sipped her tea calmly. Your face is too eye-catching. The eye-catching one is the royal family. Chen Liang muttered softly. He glanced at the tall figure who was giving orders to the shadow guards and subconsciously stood up straight. Hellion Vivian smiled. You don't have to be envious. When old Master Yang's interrogation starts at noon, you'll definitely be useful. Really? Chen Liang was excited. He looked at himself in the bronze mirror. Then I'll go dress up first. Hellion Vivian was speechless. The little seventh prince took a bite of a meat bun and chewed it a few times. Third sister-in-law, why are your subordinates so dull? Helene Vivian sighed. Maybe it's because they're born in a good family. Can they be better than third brother? The little seventh prince stood up shakily and put one hand on Helene Vivian. Third brother has always been a little. Chapter 480. Helene Vivian pinched his cheeks and felt the same way. Your third brother is an anomaly. Bailey Georgiou was handsome from head to toe. He glanced back and swept a glance at the two people behind him. His tone was indifferent. If I hear another word about this highness, you know what the consequences will be. The adult and child immediately tensed up. He heard it. How can he hear it like that? Third brother is too abnormal. He is indeed a little. The shadow guard's mouth twitched. The conversation between the little master and the princess was too loud. It was so loud, there was no reason for him not to hear it. Were they not afraid of angering the little master? The shadow guard lowered his eyes and said, Your Highness, do we need to remind the princess? Upon hearing this, Belegadew looked at the shadow guard coldly. Remind what? No, no. The shadow guard instinctively felt the displeasure from the man and did not dare to say anything more. He also understood the importance of the princess in the little master's heart, so he bowed respectfully. Belegadew retracted his gaze and walked past the shadow guard. His eyes were like a sea of stars as he looked down at Helene Vivian. He reached out a hand and his voice was as deep as a fine musical instrument, easily bewitching those who heard it. Let's go, my lord. Let's play the second game. Helene Vivian saw the faint smile at the corner of his mouth and knew that someone was going to be unlucky again. She was more than willing to cooperate with the little master. She placed her hand in his palm, and with a tug, their fingers interlocked. The little seventh prince followed behind the two of them with a meat bun in his mouth. He looked like a tiger. The people in the yamen did not know that there was a child here. The yamen runners only found it strange and kept looking behind them. The interrogation officially began. This was probably the biggest case in Fuping County in the past 100 years. Not only were all the officials from various counties present, but there were also 4 officials from the provincial capital sitting on either side of Helene Vivian. How much pressure did they have to withstand to be able to interrogate the case? However, Wei Wei's appearance was calm and unruffled, not the slightest bit different from her usual self. She glanced at Private Advisor Long, who was standing beside her. Private Advisor Long exuded an aura that was cultivated from years of being in the officialdom. His bearing made him look more like a high-ranking official than the officials from the 4 provincial capitals. Private Advisor Zhong held a grudge against Belegadew for taking over his position. He glared fiercely at Belegadew and spat in his heart. He would like to see how this gigolo could still be so mighty when that Wei guy fell from power. Belegadew was Helene Vivian's private advisor. Naturally, she had to bring him with her, especially when she was investigating a case. Bring out the criminal, Yang Dazhao. His voice was very faint and low, but what was strange was that everyone could hear his words. It was as if his voice was right next to their ears, bringing with it a strong sense of oppression. This was one of the reasons why Private Advisor Zhong disliked him the most. They were both private advisors, but this person stood higher than them. Even when the higher-ups came, they had never seen him show any other expression. What was there to be arrogant about? Private Advisor Zhong snorted coldly. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth again. He stood beside Belegadew and gave him pointers like a senior. Xiaolong, there are so many officials here. As private advisors, we should speak less and let them do as they see fit. You're new here, so you probably don't understand that there are ways to investigate a case. You can't be as rash as the officials. Belegadew glanced at him indifferently. Private Advisor Zhong saw that he had reacted, so he spoke more enthusiastically. We're a family. You can ask me if there's anything you don't understand. You can only speak after asking me. That way, you'll make fewer mistakes. Private Advisor Zhong was still nagging when Belegadew opened his mouth slowly. His tone was neither cold nor warm. He spoke slowly as if he did not care about Private Advisor Zhong at all. Who are you? You. Private Advisor Zhong did not expect to receive such an answer. His fingers were trembling as he stared at Beligaju with his eyes wide open. Fart. Hellion Vivian could not help but laugh out loud. She could clearly see that Private Advisor Zhong's face was frozen. He was so angry but could not vent his anger. He was so stupid. However, Bailey Jiaoju's expression remained indifferent as he stared straight at the Yamen Hall in front of him. His pair of long and narrow eyes did not have the slightest ripple, as if the person who said those words just now was not him. Hellion Vivian coughed softly and put on a serious expression. She saw that old Master Yang was brought up by 2 Yamen runners. He did not kneel down. Because he had the title of Jinsha, he stood there swaggering. His eyes met Hellion Vivian's and he held his round belly. Before Hellion Vivian could ask, he began to shout loudly, "Your Excellency, I've been wronged." Hellion Vivian laughed mockingly, "You? Wronged? Your Excellency, I know that you have misunderstood me." Old Master Yang said with a smile, "I don't blame you. After all, I've reached my current position. It's inevitable that there will be many rumors and slanders. I've never expected anyone to be grateful for what I do. I didn't expect that those despicable people would have the opportunity to slander me. But then again, Your Excellency is biased against me. I can slowly prove it to you. Isn't it a little unfair to bring this matter to the imperial court?" Hellion Wei's eyes were slightly cold as she looked at him without saying anything. Chen Liang and the little 7th prince stood side by side in the crowd. The former scolded fiercely, "I, as your young master, have lived for so many years, but I have never seen such a shameless person like that Yang guy. He was the one who kidnapped the girl, and now he is saying it out loud, as if he is some great hero. We shouldn't waste our breath on such a person. We should just kill him with our status." Little 7th prince chewed on a meat bun. His handsome face was very gloomy. Those who hurt the people will definitely get what they deserve. Third brother has plenty of ways to shut him up. We can kill him without using our status. Yes. Chen Liang nodded and reached out to massage the little one's shoulders. He said very sensibly, "Young Uncle Master is wise." Little 7th prince turned his head and said fiercely, "You're not bad." It was rare to be praised by young Uncle Master. Chen Liang was so touched that he was about to cry. When he was in the White Academy, he was so afraid of young Uncle Master that he took a detour. Although he was young, his killing power was great. All the guards here combined were not enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. "Master, master." The servant who stood on tiptoe and finally saw his young master. He tugged at Lord Chen's sleeve and pointed at the crowd. I found young master." Lord Chen looked in the direction of his finger. His eyes were already unable to calm down. When he saw little bald head standing beside his beloved son, he immediately became restless. Even this little ancestor was here. Chapter 481. In the War Dragon Empire, from the retired emperor to eunuch son, everyone doted on the little 7th prince. When he came out of the capital to take up his post, he heard from the people in the palace that the retired emperor was worried about the little 7th prince. He wanted to make more food for the little 7th prince so that the little 7th prince would not harm the red-crowned cranes in the palace. Although the retired emperor said so, everyone could hear the affection in his words. If something were to happen to the little 7th prince, who was under his jurisdiction, he would not hesitate. He would not be able to kill him even if he had 100 heads. Fortunately, his stupid son was enlightened this time. It seemed that he was getting along well with the little 7th prince. Lord Chen tried to calm himself down. In just half a day, his heart felt like it was on a roller coaster, going up and down countless times. "My lord, shall we go now?" The servant felt that it was great to see his young master again. The governor of 3 provinces, Lord Chen, pulled him back. "Wait a while more. Wait." The servant could not understand his lord's intention. Lord Chen had been in the bureaucracy for a long time. Now that his beloved son was arranged to be in the audience for the hearing, it was obvious that His Highness did not want to reveal his identity yet. If he went out now, he might be recognized. If he really ruined His Highness's plan, his position as the governor of 3 provinces would come to an end. So, let's wait a while more, he told himself that, but he could not relax. He listened to the sounds inside, and his palms were sweating. Private Advisor Zhong said recklessly, "Lady Wei, I think that this matter needs to be investigated from many aspects. For example, who can prove that Father Liu is not lying?" Hearing this, Helian Wei curled her lips into a smile. She played with the jade pendant on her waist and called out in a leisurely tone, "Private Advisor Long." Bailey Jiu did not say a word. He went forward and kicked Private Advisor Zhong between his legs with precision. A cracking sound was heard. Private Advisor Zhong fell to his knees on the ground. He looked like he was in pain. "This is simply nonsense." Magistrate Liao immediately stood up and looked at Helian Vivian angrily. "Lord Wei, what do you think the Imperial Court is? How can you casually ask your private advisor to beat someone up?" Beligaju looked back at him and said calmly, "Lord Liao, before asking this question, you should ask Private Advisor Zhong if he knows the rules of the Imperial Court. Even the judge hasn't spoken. What right does he have to speak?" Magistrate Liao choked on his words and felt a pain in his chest. He looked at Private Advisor Zhong, who was in a mess on the ground, and became even angrier. "Even so, you can't hit him. Is this how you act as a private advisor?" "Lord Liao." Helian Vivian interrupted him. "It was my idea to hit Private Advisor Zhong. Sometimes, I have to teach the people around me a lesson when they don't know the rules. Lord Liao shouldn't have any objections to me teaching my people a lesson, right?" After hearing Helian Vivian's words, the people remembered that Private Advisor Zhong was the private advisor of Fuping Yamen. Didn't that make him a subordinate of the county magistrate? It was unreasonable for the county magistrate to teach his subordinates a lesson. The four officials from the provincial capital sitting on the seats looked at each other. They coughed softly and said coldly, "Lord Wei, do you want us to stand aside and watch you teach your subordinates a lesson?" Governor Chen, who was standing at the periphery, recognized the voices of his former subordinates. He could not help but curse in a low voice. He was really going to be killed by these idiots. Why did they have the guts to interfere? Of course not. Helian Vivian smiled and ordered the Yamen runners at the side, "Help Private Advisor Zhong out. Let him think about what he did wrong." The manservants were stunned. This was the first time that Private Advisor Zhong was chased out of the Imperial Court in such a sorry state. After all, he had never lost in all these years. When he was investigating a case, he could protect whoever he wanted. With this, he received a lot of money. His silver tongue could even turn black into white. Now, before the court started, he was dragged out. And he was beaten up so badly, the manservants felt that something was wrong no matter how they thought about it. At this moment, Magistrate Liao had already realized what was going on. His eyes looked like they could spit fire at any time. This was their purpose. From the beginning, they wanted to drag Private Advisor Zhong out and force him to defend Yang Dazhao in person. He had underestimated this private advisor who followed Magistrate Wei around. He was good at using tricks. However, just based on this point alone, what could they do to them? How naive. Magistrate Liao smiled coldly and said, "Although Private Advisor Zhong broke the rules, Lord Wei, regarding the last question that Private Advisor Zhong asked, shouldn't you answer it directly? Who can be sure that the fellow with the surname Liu is not lying? As far as I know, that person has been looking at Yang Dazhao with hostility. No matter how little one tael of silver is, it's still silver. Since old Liu has accepted the money, it's reasonable that Yang Dazhao wants to marry his daughter. Moreover, Lord Wei hasn't understood the situation clearly. It's not right to convict Yang Dazhao like this." Helian Wei glanced at Magistrate Liao as she twirled the ring on her little finger. Lord Liao really treats Yang Dazhao as his own family member to say such words. "I just want to remind Lord Wei, so that he won't misjudge the case and fall into trouble." Since they were facing each other directly, Magistrate Liao did not care about anything else. He turned around and said to the officials from the provincial capital, "I heard that other than the Liu family, 2 other families also said that Yang Dazhao's style was problematic. Later on, they felt guilty for spreading rumors about Yang Dazhao behind his back. So, they came to the Yamen and wanted to testify for Yang Dazhao personally." Hearing this, Wei's shapely eyebrows creased. Magistrate Liao smiled when he saw her expression. He looked very confident. Haha, it's too late to be anxious now. He would like to see how this person with the surname Wei would handle being pushed by everyone later. The officials from the provincial capital were cooperative. Since there are other witnesses, summon them for questioning. Yes. The Yamen runner bowed his head respectfully and soon brought the two families in. Magistrate Liao was very amiable. You don't have to be afraid. Just say what you want to say. The two families did not dare to raise their heads. They only kneeled on the ground and did not look at Hellion Vivian's eyes. They said in a cowardly voice, "We misunderstood Old Master Yang. Our family didn't have a harvest and we had a hard time. Old Master Yang pitied us, so he wanted to marry Xiao Ju and Xiao Kui. Firstly, he really likes them. Secondly, he can give us some relief." Chapter 482. That's not what they said before. Chen Liang clenched his fists in the crowd. He really didn't understand. They were the ones who found the boss and asked for redress. Now, they were the ones who put the boss in a stalemate. Didn't they know that the whole case would be overturned and the boss would be stepped on by that Liao guy? Little Seventh Prince's handsome face became unprecedentedly serious. He narrowed his eyes as if he was going to start a fight if there was any change in the situation. The sudden reversal of the confession caused the entire interrogation scene to fall into a discussion. 2 out of the 3 families said that they had wronged Old Master Yang. If that's the case, the possibility of Old Man Liu lying is very high. Who knows? If you ask me, this kind of thing takes 2 hands to clap. Look at that girl surnamed Liu, she's so seductive at such a young age. Who knows, she might have taken the initiative to approach him. When Old Master Yang took their grain, Old Man Liu didn't have such a big reaction. Now that the harvest is not good, he's making such a fuss. He's really scheming. Sarcasm swept toward the father and daughter of the Liu family like a tidal wave. Liu Yin's eyes turned red. Her whole body trembled and she felt a chill from the bottom of her heart. Could it be that in people's eyes, it would always be like this? She still couldn't forget how she had risked her life to escape the first time she was dragged to the Yang Manor. Even now, she still had nightmares at night about that scene. If Lord Wei and Private Advisor Long hadn't appeared, her life would have been ruined. She was the victim. Why didn't they punish that heinous man when something like this happened? Why did they have to find fault with the woman? Was this the so-called fairness and loyalty? She would rather not. For the first time, Liu Rin felt powerless. Just when she was about to give up, a lazy and clear voice came to her ears. "Fellow villagers, you speak so harshly. Aren't you afraid that one day, when your daughter is bullied, she will also be pointed at and scolded by others?" Hellion Vivian's words were like a silencer in the crowd. In just a moment, all the gossiping people stopped talking. They looked at each other and quickly moved away. Then, he quickly moved away with an awkward expression on his face. There were also some people who refused to change their nature. "If I had a daughter like her, I would strangle her to death the moment she was born, so that she wouldn't embarrass me in the future." Then this official truly feels sorry for your daughter. Hellion Vivian looked at the man and said, "Even a beast knows that even a vicious tiger won't eat its own cubs. You, on the other hand, are good. Your daughter is being bullied. It's fine if you don't help her vent her anger, but you still want to sprinkle salt on her wound. Well done." Hearing Hellion Vivian's words, all the citizens looked at that person. The old man's face turned red as he braced himself and said, That's because she did something that offended the clan. This official knows very well what kind of woman Liu Yin is. The case hasn't been settled yet, but this fellow from the same village is already spouting nonsense." Hellion Vivian sneered, "What's your motive?" Magistrate Liao was worried that the people who bribed the people would be found out, so he stopped Hellion Vivian in time. "Lord Wei, you're thinking too much. This fellow from the same village is just expressing his opinion, and you're taking it so seriously. However, you don't know that some people look honest on the surface, but they're actually doing some shady things behind the scenes." As he spoke, Magistrate Liao looked at Yang Dazhao. "Yang Dazhao, let me ask you. Has Liu Yin ever expressed anything to you in private? Every time she comes to the Yang Manor with her father to deliver food, She wears very eye-catching clothes, and she always looks at me. Old Master Yang let out a long sigh. Forget it, I've seen a lot of girls like her who still pretend to be chaste even after being a whore. I just don't want to lower myself to her level. You're lying. Liu Yin couldn't hold it in any longer. She rushed towards Old Master Yang like a madwoman, wanting to perish together with the most disgusting scum in the world. However, before she could get close to Old Master Yang, a Yamen runner stopped her. Yang Dazhao was scared out of his wits. He was really worried that he would be scratched by her, so he scolded coldly, "Crazy woman." Then, he raised his head and looked at the hearing officials. "My lords, you have to give me justice. Now, someone has come out to testify that I've been wronged, but Lord Wei only believes this woman's words. Haha, I don't know if he's bewitched." Yang Dazhao's meaning was very obvious. He was saying that there was something between Helian Vivian and Liu Yin. Yang Dazhao. Liu Yin knew how despicable this man was, but she never thought that he would be despicable to this extent. Lord Wei only wanted to help her clear her name, but he actually led others to think that there was something going on between her and Lord Wei. Even though Liu Yin didn't have much education, she knew that once this matter was settled, she could just die to prove her sincerity, but Lord Wei's future would be ruined. Could it be that these provincial officials were all blind? The one who had a loophole in his words was Yang Dazhao. Why didn't they stop him and let him slander Lord Wei? Yang Dazhao turned around and glanced at Liu Yin. His eyes were filled with complacency and disdain. Although this little girl has expressed her interest to me, but since Lord Wei likes her, then this Yang can just give her to Lord Wei. Why must Lord Wei keep making things difficult for this Yang? After all, Liu Yin was still young. Moreover, anyone would be angry if they were accused like this, so Liu Yin was so angry that she felt dizzy. Magistrate Liao looked at this scene with satisfaction. He sat in his seat and leisurely drank his tea. The other officials from the provincial capital didn't say anything either. They just let Yang Dazhao defend himself in the imperial court. Their thoughts were actually very simple. Was there a need to investigate this case? It was just a farm girl who was wronged and didn't want to be Yang Dazhao's concubine. When the time comes, they could just ask Yang Dazhao to give her more money and everything would be solved. Why did this Wei guy have to make such a big fuss? Why didn't he consider his own status? They never liked subordinates who didn't know the rules. They could use this opportunity to give him a warning, so that he wouldn't always stick his head out. He thought that he had some skills, but he was still controlled by Magistrate Liao. Now that this Wei guy has fallen, there might be hope for the road construction project. They couldn't come here for nothing, so they had to do something to show the governor. However, Governor Chen, who was standing in the crowd, was extremely anxious. Chapter 483. Governor Chen wanted to go out, but he was afraid that it was not the right time. If he did not go out, he would have to let that bunch of idiots die. Governor Chen massaged his throbbing temples and subconsciously looked at Her Highness's face. He felt a chill from the bottom of his heart as soon as he saw it. At that moment, he knew that he would not be able to protect that old subordinate of his. It was very likely that even he, the governor of 3 provinces, would be implicated. In the main hall, Helian Vivian loosened her clenched fists and sneered at Old Master Yang. "Yang Dazhao, your ability to reverse right and wrong is not bad." As she spoke, she looked straight ahead with her eyes burning like torches. "Since everyone is so confused as to why I insist on interfering in Miss Liu Yin's matter, then I will tell everyone the cause and effect. On the first day I took office in Fuping County, I saw 2 big men dragging a young lady into the Yang Manor. The young lady was crying her heart out, but no one dared to stop them. I would like to ask, if Miss Liu Yin had really expressed her feelings for Old Master Yang, why didn't she enter the Yang Manor happily? Why would she be dragged in like this?" Everyone fell into deep thought after hearing this. That was because she stole the silver from the Yang Manor. That was why I sent someone to catch her, Yang Dazhao explained anxiously. Helian Vivian looked at him mockingly. "Yang Dazhao, if you really married a concubine who was in love with you, would that concubine steal your silver? According to you, Yang Dazhao, aren't you very generous to people?" Anyway, she's just a money grubber." Yang Dazhao curled his lips guiltily. "Who knows, This fickle woman might have taken a fancy to some pretty boy and thought that the silver I gave her was not enough, so she wanted to get more money to spend with someone else. You, Yang Dazhao, why don't you just go and die? Liu Yin screamed at the top of her lungs. Almost everyone could see her pain. The commoners looked at each other, and their gazes towards Yang Dazhao were filled with suspicion and anger. Yang Dazhao, on the other hand, was very disapproving. He even took this opportunity to bite back at Liu Yin. My lady, you must control this crazy woman. She always keeps on harming me. I'm really worried that she will hurt me. Look at her, she even has the intention to kill me now. The officials from the provincial capital coughed a few times but didn't say anything. They only reminded Magistrate Liao with their eyes, asking him to restrain Yang Dazhao. Magistrate Liao also knew that it was not a good thing to go overboard, so he wanted to ask Yang Dazhao to stop. However, at this moment, Helian Wei smiled, but that smile did not reach her eyes. Yang Dazhao, you're really the most shameless person I've ever met, casually speaking without thinking and making up stories about other people. This official wants to see who gave you the guts to do so. I don't have the guts. Yang Dazhao glanced at Helian Wei coldly. Lord Wei, have you forgotten? Someone has just proven that I was wrongly accused. How can Lord Wei still say that I believe him? Making up stories about other people? I think Lord Wei is the one with the problem. Hearing this, Liu Yin turned around and looked at the person who was kneeling on the ground. Xiao Kui, do you really want Lord Wei to take the blame for you? Back then, who was the one who begged Lord Wei to redress our grievances? Have you all forgotten? The person called Xiao Kui's shoulders trembled. She lowered her head even more, as if she didn't dare to speak at all. Chen Liangzhen couldn't wait to go out immediately, but before he came, his boss told him to watch from the side. But now, did he really have to watch that group of bullshit officials frame his boss to the point where he couldn't explain himself? Alright, Lord Wei, you don't have to think of ways to defend this person surnamed Liu anymore. If they really think that this official's betrothal gift is too little, this official will give them more. As he spoke, Yang Dazhao held his stomach and looked down at Liu Yin arrogantly. His tone was filled with disdain. Tell me, how much do you want? The deep sense of humiliation made Liu Yin bite her lips until they bled. Yang Dazhao's face was filled with more and more smiles. When he looked at that group of people, his eyes were filled with ridicule. A group of poor people still wanted to fight with him. He just had to give them some money to make them overturn their testimonies, not to mention sleeping with 2 or 3 of their daughters. Is 50 taels enough? Yang Dazhao sneered. He raised his hand and counted out 2 banknotes and threw them at Liu Yin's face. Helian Vivian suddenly narrowed her eyes. Her voice was extremely cold. Yang Dazhao, I am warning you. If you don't stop now, I will make sure that your entire family will be buried with you. Lord Wei, are you feeling sorry for me? Yang Dazhao laughed. Oh right, this official thought about it. Lord Wei's background is also not good. I am sure that you have never seen so much money before, right? Do you want this official to show you a few more banknotes? No need. Bailey Jiaoju, who had not spoken a word since the beginning, opened his mouth slowly. He glanced at the people who were kneeling on the ground unhurriedly. Then, he met Yang Dazhao's eyes and said, Lord Wei won't be interested in that little bit of money of yours. Yang Dazhao did not understand why he would feel so much pressure from an advisor. The feeling of being grabbed by the throat made his scalp numb. However, he had no choice but to continue with what he had said before. He said to Helian Vivian without giving up, after saying so much, how can Lord Wei prove that you are not doing so much for Liu Yin because of personal feelings? Is it really good for a county magistrate to handle a case like this? What Yang Dazhao said is right. Magistrate Liao saw the time and said in a deep voice, Lord Wei, please put this case aside for the time being. It is the principle of avoiding relatives. We will see if you can still stay in Fuping County after the officials have finished their investigation. Helian Vivian glanced sideways at Magistrate Liao. Her eyes were sharp. Lord Liao, the accused is Liao Dazhao, not me. Moreover, there is nothing between Liu Yin and me. We have only known each other for 2 days. How could there be any personal feelings between us? Without any evidence, You want to suspend my work? Have you thought about the consequences? Consequences? Magistrate Liao sneered. Lord Wei, you should be thinking about the consequences. Suspending your work is what the people want. Moreover, didn't someone say that their previous accusation was wrongly accusing Yang Dazhao? Lord Wei, be careful that you won't be able to clean up the mess if you continue to push your luck. My lord, Belegaju's mouth seemed to be cold as he glanced at Magistrate Liao. His gaze was extremely cold. At that moment, Magistrate Liao felt that Private Advisor Long's back looked familiar. However, he could not remember where he had seen this person before. Chapter 484. Belegaju only glanced at Magistrate Liao before retracting his gaze. He walked to Hellion Vivian and spoke slowly like a real private advisor. Lord Wei, I would like to request for the Yarman's witnesses to be summoned to the court. Hellion Vivian looked at the evil smile on the man's face. Her thin lips curled into a smile. Permission granted. Belegaju turned around and straightened his long legs. His dark eyes were as dark as the night sky, and an oppressive chill swept out. Someone, bring the 2 stewards from the Yang Manor here. As soon as his voice fell, 4 figures appeared in unison outside the Yarman. Each of them was dressed in black and had the same body shape. They pushed the people in their hands away. Yang Dazhao's expression changed immediately. Why are you here? Hurry up and go back to where you came from. The 2 stewards' faces were bruised and swollen beyond recognition. The corners of their lips were twitching in pain, and their eyes were filled with tears. They wanted to go back too. But the people behind them were scarier than the devil. After discovering that they had bribed the witnesses, not only did they beat them up, but they also monitored their families. If they did not come to the court, these people would kill their entire families. Even if they wanted to go back, they did not dare to. Yang Dazhao saw that he could not order the 2 stewards around, so he directly rushed over and grabbed one of them by the arm. Yang Dazhao. Hellion Vivian suddenly spoke and stopped his actions. Her voice was clear and strong. What are you doing to the witnesses? Don't forget that this is the Yarman's restricted area. Even if you have someone backing you up, don't go overboard. When she said this, she looked at Magistrate Liao and said it. In front of everyone, Magistrate Liao's face turned green from her stare. He had no choice but to reprimand Yang Dazhao. You don't know the rules. Come back. But Magistrate Yang still wanted to say something. Magistrate Liao's face was obviously gloomy. He glared at him sternly, then turned to Hellion Vivian and said, Lord Wei, do you need me to remind you again? Because of the deep relationship between you and Liu Yin, you are not suitable to continue investigating this case. Hand over the things you have found and let the officials from the provincial capital make a decision. The relationship between me and Liu Yin? What relationship do I have with Liu Yin? Hellion Vivian's eyes were cold. She said calmly, besides, Magistrate Liao, can't you see that the witnesses are here? You don't ask the witnesses what they know, but you are protecting Yang instead. You want to stop me from investigating this case. It is obvious who is the selfish one here. Hearing Hellion Wei's words, someone among the crowd could not help but shout, Lord Wei is right. Magistrate Liao is the one who is the one. That's right. It is not to protect is. Could it be that Yang Dazhao is Magistrate Liao's relative? The power of the villagers was not to be underestimated. When one person shouted, the rest followed suit. Perhaps it was because of what Hellion Vivian said earlier. They did not want to wait until the day when their daughter was bullied and they did not even have a place to complain. Facing such a large number of people, the officials from the provincial capital had to step out and comfort them personally. Villagers, you have to believe in the imperial court and Magistrate Liao. He just wants to investigate the case. Lord Wei also wants to investigate the case. Why don't I see you speaking up for him? Chen Liang did not show his face, but his voice was heard. If you ask me, you have received benefits from Magistrate Liao, that's why you are so biased towards him. Hearing this, the governor of 3 provinces, Magistrate Chen, sighed. Even his foolish son knew that he should not do this. How could these adults be so muddle-headed? The public opinion was directed towards the officials from the provincial capital. They could not continue to speak for Magistrate Liao, so they could only follow the public opinion and said loudly, "Villagers, how can you think of us like this? Everything we do is to find out what the truth is. There is no such thing as favoritism. If that's the case, why don't you let Lord Wei continue to investigate the case?" More and more voices were heard. The officials from the provincial capital were worried that they would be surrounded like they were during the day, so they looked at each other and said, "We did not say that we would not let Lord Wei continue to investigate the case. We just feel that he is not suitable for this case and will affect the judgment of the result." At this point, they paused for a moment, then looked at Helian Wei and said, "If the villagers request, then Lord Wei, you will continue to try the case. However, let me say this first, you must ensure absolute fairness." Helian Wei didn't feel like looking at them trying to put up a facade of peace. She stood up with both legs and strolled toward the two girls kneeling on the ground. Her graceful steps exuded an air of nobility that was almost completely displayed. She looked straight at Xiao Kui and the other girls who did not dare to look at her. "I will ask you one last time, do you really want to overturn the testimony that you wanted to sue Yang Dazhao?" Of the two girls, one of them was stuttering, while the other looked at Helian Vivian hesitantly. I. She had just opened her mouth when she was pulled back by her relative. The strength of his hand was shockingly strong. Her relative glared at her angrily. His fierce gaze was filled with a profound meaning that others could not understand. Xiao Kui immediately shut her mouth. Her fingers were white as she clutched her clothes, and lowered her head silently. Helian Vivian saw all of this, her eyes slightly darkened. Yang Dazhao, on the other hand, smiled proudly. He was at his wit's end, right? So what if he caught the two stewards? As long as no one was afraid of telling the truth, this Wei guy could not do anything to him. Beligaju could tell what he was thinking at first glance. He did not say anything, he just bent down and lifted one of the stewards up with his gloved hand. "Tell me everything you know, or else." The corners of Bailey Jiaoju's mouth were still smiling, but it could make people feel unprecedented fear. Especially when his legs were hanging in the air, the steward was so scared that his face turned pale. He was really afraid that he would be strangled to death. He stuttered and begged for mercy. I'll tell you everything. Just before the trial started, Private Advisor Zhong and Lord Yang thought of a way. Slander, this is slander. Yang Dazhao's heart skipped a beat when the steward opened his mouth. Now, he was even more furious. He could not wait to go up and shut his mouth. However, the two shadows in black standing on his left and right were like a wall. No matter how hard he tried, he could not break through. The steward was also afraid that Yang Dazhao would settle the score with him after the trial. He became a little timid when he said this. However, how could His Highness allow him to retreat? His fingers pressed down, his whole body was filled with hostility. What way? Chapter 485. The steward felt that even breathing had become a luxury. He said with difficulty, spend money to seal the mouth. Hearing this, there was an uproar inside and outside the yamen. On the contrary, Helian Wei was very calm. Official Liao and Yang Dazhao's expressions changed. It was extremely ugly. Beligaju let go of the steward and put him down. His voice was as cold as ice. "Tell me the details." Although Master was in prison, he was aware of what was happening outside the prison. The one who acted as the middleman was Private Advisor Zhong. After the near-death experience, the steward didn't dare to hide anything anymore. He panted and told the whole story. When Private Advisor Zhong found out that there were two other families who wanted to accuse Old Master, he went to the dungeon to find Old Master to discuss countermeasures. In the end, the two of them decided that Steward Zhong and I would take 50 taels of silver to those two families and tell them that if they changed the testimonies of those who accused Old Master, they would be given another 50 taels of silver. Upon hearing this, Xiao Kui, who had been tormented by her conscience, suddenly reached out and pushed away the relative who was secretly threatening her. She kowtowed to Helian Wei and said, "I am sorry, Lord Wei." Helian Wei stood where she was without moving. She knew that it was time for the tables to turn. Xiao Kui looked up. Her eyes were red with tears. "I shouldn't have accepted those taels of silver. But Official Wei, I really couldn't do anything. At my age, I should have been married a long time ago. Because of that nightmare, Yang Dazhao, he didn't care about my wishes and took me by force. He threw me a banknote and warned me not to report it to the authorities. Otherwise, my ending would be 10 times worse than now. I was young and didn't know the ways of the world. I couldn't stand that kind of humiliation. I directly reported it to the Yamen, but he was released in less than a day. The county magistrate at that time even convicted me of adultery and made me soak in the river for an entire night. For more than 100 days, I would dream of this bastard every night. I really wanted to drink his blood and eat his flesh. I wanted to see him get sentenced. But the heavens didn't open their eyes. The one surnamed Yang has someone protecting me. I'm just a commoner. Fighting with him is simply courting death. Just like what he said, I sued him. Not only did I not see him get the punishment he deserved, but I also became an unchaste and unclean woman. For so many days, all of my relatives pointed at my parents and laughed at me. Before the trial started, someone sent money over. If I accepted it, I could save some money for my parents. If I didn't accept it, I would end up in a miserable state. My second uncle told me so I listened. As Xiao Kui's cries grew louder, all the citizens understood what was going on. They turned their heads and looked at Yang Dazhao. This Yang guy is simply not human. Yang Dazhao turned around and glared at him fiercely. Who are you calling inhumane? That person ignored him and looked at Hellion Vivian, saying, Lord Wei, you must punish him. No matter who is above him, if this kind of person is not punished, we citizens will not be able to live in peace. I think it's a little difficult. Who asked that Yang guy to have Magistrate Liao's protection? Maybe it's not just Magistrate Liao, even the lords from the provincial capital seem to take special care of him. Chen Liang thought that he was very competent as a support. Someone asked, didn't the capital send a governor of 3 provinces? He should be able to do something about it, right? Chen Liang stretched his neck and straightened his chest proudly. He was just about to praise his father. He heard the crowd's reply. What do you mean? All the officials are the same. If it wasn't for Governor Chen's permission, would the lords from the provincial capital be like this? Governor Chen was speechless. Master. The servant also heard the discussion around him. He suddenly did not dare to look at his master's face. Chen Liang really wanted to explain for his father, but the majority of the villagers did not give him the chance to do so. These officials are too evil. Governor Chen was speechless. Actually, there are some who are not evil, you can look at me. In fact, no one cared about who was standing beside them. Even if Governor Chen was dressed very well and looked very dignified, everyone's attention was still on the Yamen. They all wanted to see how old Master Yang would end up. However, Yang Dazhao did not take it seriously. Were these poor people crazy? Could it be that they couldn't see that Magistrate Liao had invited the officials from the provincial capital to protect him? All these years, these officials had taken so much from him. How could they bear to lock him up for real? Just because of a small county magistrate? Yang Dazhao was about to die, but he still did not know what Hellion Vivian's most powerful trick was. He also did not know that Hellion Vivian would directly look past Magistrate Liao and look at the officials from the provincial capital. Her eyes were shining. Lords, you heard the voices of the people. What should we do about this case? Do we need to invite Governor Chen here personally? Hearing the words Governor Chen, the 4 people's faces turned pale. They unknowingly exchanged glances with Magistrate Liao. Magistrate Liao also knew that he could not insist on protecting Yang Dazhao anymore. If he continued to protect him, he was afraid that he would be implicated to death. However, he really couldn't bear to swallow his anger like this. What Wei did in the field earlier was already a slap to his face. Now, with this move, he had completely lost face. No matter what would happen to Yang Dazhao, he had to get back at him. Thinking of this, Magistrate Liao glanced at the servant beside him. The manservant seemed to have understood something in an instant and quietly retreated. Magistrate Liao quickly made up his mind after he did that. He turned around abruptly and said to Yang Zhaozhao in disappointment, Old Yang, I really didn't expect you to be this kind of person. You have done so much for Fuping County all these years, and I can't believe that you would commit such a foolish mistake. Yang Dazhao was stunned. Lord, what do you mean? I have always believed in your character, but what about you? Magistrate Liao shook his head. He looked extremely distressed. Forget it, it's time to give the people an explanation. Guards, take him away. Flog him to death. Yang Dazhao finally realized that Magistrate Liao was determined to use him as a scapegoat. How could he be willing to accept this? Was the money that he handed in every year not worth it for him to protect himself at this crucial moment? If that was the case, he would go all out and die together. Lord, you can't do this. The matter of giving money to those two families was clearly. Chapter 486. Before Yang Dazhao could finish his sentence, he was brutally punched by the guard brought by Magistrate Liao. The guard was a water-class martial artist. With one punch, Yang Dazhao's front teeth were broken. Every time he opened his mouth, blood would flow out. He ended up in a terrible state. When Hellion Vivian wanted to ask something, the other party could no longer speak. One could imagine how ruthless Magistrate Liao was. The case was finally reversed. Yang Dazhao's crime became a fact. He also tasted the feeling of being pushed around by everyone. No one spoke up for him. He lay there on the ground, and when he was almost half dead, the guard dragged him away. Liu Rin and Old Man Liu were very emotional. Especially Liu Rin. She finally got rid of the strange gazes. When she looked at Hellion Vivian again, her eyes were filled with tears. As for the other two women, they were crying out loud. After so long, they finally got to vent their grievances. As long as Yang Dazhao was not convicted, they would always live under the shadow of that incident. Not only were they hurt, but they would also be pointed at and called indecent by everyone. At that moment, Xiao Kui could not describe what she was feeling. She could only cry loudly and grab Liu Rin's hand. Finally, someone can punish him. Finally. A simple sentence contained too much pain and hatred. Xiao Kui's second uncle was not as happy. He pursed his lips and looked at Magistrate Liao. Lord Liao, look. Old Master Yang promised to give us the other half of the silver. How dare they mention the silver in front of him? Magistrate Liao could not wait to kill these stupid villagers. Not only were they greedy for money, they did not know how to look at the situation. My fellow countrymen, Magistrate Liao said in a cold voice, do you know that it was because you gave false testimony for Yang Dazhao that we almost misjudged the case? Men, take this unruly citizen away and give him 20 strokes of the plank. Flogged. The person was dumbfounded. He followed this little bastard to the yamen for the silver. Why did he not get the silver in the end and have to be flogged? My lord. The pale-faced man was anxious and wanted to say something, but the guards who dragged Yang Dazhao away just now had already lifted him up. Two yamen runners on his left and right stretched out their hands to hold him down. Not long after, the sound of planks being struck could be heard in the imperial court. Hearing this, everyone felt a little heartache. However, Magistrate Liao shifted all his resentment towards Hellion Vivian to the farmer who shouldn't have stood up at this time. Give him a good beating. If anyone dares to give false testimony in the future, give him 20 strokes of the plank first. This will teach him a lesson and prevent him from affecting the investigation of the case. Magistrate Liao was obviously trying to push the blame of the wrongful judgment onto the commoners. According to him, the wrongful judgment of this case had nothing to do with the officials shielding the commoners. It was all because there were witnesses. Lord Liao's subordinates are really fast. Hellion Wei's voice was very calm, no emotion could be detected from her voice. She did not stop Magistrate Liao either. People who gave false testimony should be punished, especially people like him, who knew that giving false testimony would harm others but still appeared in court for the sake of getting money. He deserved to be punished even more. However, this didn't mean that the officials weren't responsible at all, especially the mastermind with the surname Liao. However, some people in this world were always more shameless than one could imagine. Magistrate Liao said righteously, there's nothing much to say when dealing with people like this. Hellion Vivian looked at Magistrate Liao's acting mockingly. She twirled her fingers and a cold smile appeared on her face. If that's the case, Lord Liao, shouldn't you explain what Yang Dazhao said at the end? According to what he said to the fellow villager who gave false testimony, it was Lord Liao's idea to give the witness the silver. As soon as she said this, the commoners who were listening to the trial all looked at Magistrate Liao. The situation of the officials from the provincial capital had also become somewhat unsightly. Magistrate Liao narrowed his eyes dangerously and said with a gloomy voice, "Lord Wei, you can't simply say things like slandering others. The two stewards who are kneeling on the ground are from the Yang Manor and not from the Liao Manor. It's not good to put all the blame on me. Lord Liao, are you not admitting to it?" Helian Vivian smiled. "It's okay, he's not dead yet. Private Advisor Long, please bring the villager here again." Bailey Jiao devilishly curved his thin lips. Just as he took a step forward, two bodyguards blocked in front of him. Helian Vivian's eyes suddenly turned cold. The governor of 3 provinces, Lord Chen, felt that he had to leave. Otherwise, no one would be able to clean up the mess. Unexpectedly, at this moment, an ear-piercing voice came from the outside, reporting to my lord. "I want to sue County Magistrate Wei of Fuping County." The person who came was about 17 or 18 years old. Not only was he dressed in a brocade robe, but he also wore a big shiny golden ring on his finger. Who else could it be other than Master Liao from his arrogant and ostentatious appearance? He exchanged glances with Magistrate Liao as soon as he came in. Magistrate Liao nodded at him discreetly. The corners of his mouth were slightly curled into a sinister smile. It was obvious that he was targeting Helian Vivian. Helian Vivian raised her eyes and exchanged glances with Beligaju. She could not tell whether the man was happy or angry from his deep black eyes. The few officials from the provincial capital reacted strongly when they saw Master Liao. They subconsciously looked at Magistrate Liao. In fact, the reason why Magistrate Liao was able to do so well was mainly because of his son. Master Liao was the only nephew of the elder in the capital city. It could be said that the elder doted on him very much. It was said that the elder had the intention to pass on his position to his nephew. It could be said that all the power over there would most likely fall into Master Liao's hands one day. That was why the officials in the provincial capital behaved in such a manner. One of the officials who relied on the Helian family stood up directly and said with a smile, "Second young master, why are you here?" Helian Vivian raised her eyebrows when she heard the way he addressed her. The corners of her mouth curled into a playful smile. When Yuan Ming heard these words, it was rare for him to appear. His tone carried an evil smile. "Woman, I think you might as well reveal your identity as a man. This group of officials are simply bastards who only recognize power. In a moment, who knows how they will gang up to frame you. I am very clear about the tricks of humans." Helian Vivian tilted her head and thought about it. She seemed to be thinking about Yuan Ming's words. Master Liao walked toward Helian Vivian with his head held high. His posture was full of arrogance. "I want to sue the county magistrate of Fuping County, Wei. Chapter 487. Sue Master Wei? Sue Master Wei for what? The onlookers looked at each other and were confused about the situation. However, they were worried. It was obvious that Master Liao was more powerful than Yang Dazhao. Nothing bad will happen to Lord Wei, right? Liu Yin looked at Helian Vivian anxiously. Helian Vivian had a mocking look on her face. "You want to sue me?" "That's right." Young Master Liao narrowed his eyes. "Not only did you not apologize to me when you bumped into me, but you also casually injured my guards and detained all of them. You don't deserve to be an official with this kind of abuse of power." Chen Liang's face darkened when he heard this. He knew very well what was going on at that time. At that time, this little bastard surnamed Liao admitted his mistake without any hesitation. "Now that I'm not here, he dares to bully my boss." Compared to Chen Liang's anger, Helian Vivian laughed. "Oh? Then what do you think I should do to continue being an official and compensate you for your clothes? Can you afford to compensate for my clothes?" Master Liao was much more arrogant than Magistrate Liao. "Look at how shabby you are. I know what kind of background you have. Open your eyes and look at the clothes I'm wearing. Even if you have a lifetime of salary, you might not be able to afford one of them. Governor Chen almost flipped the table when he heard this. This Master Liao was so fearless because he had someone backing him up. He could kill him with just one of the things in Her Highness' bedroom. He was still arguing about a piece of clothing. I don't know if I should admire his stupidity or laugh at his naivety. The father and son had the same thought. However, Chen Liang's reaction was more obvious. He gritted his teeth. This Liao guy is really asking for a beating. If we don't beat him up, he'll play tricks here. The little seventh prince snorted. He dares to compare who's richer with third brother and third sister-in-law. Is this person's brain not fully developed? Master Liao was completely unaware of the evaluation of him by the people outside. He was very rich and overbearing. Furthermore, how are we going to settle the matter of you beating up my guards? You want to get rid of me with a little bit of silver? Dream on. Then, what do you want? Bailey Jiaoju unhurriedly tidied up his sleeves and slowly raised his eyes. Little Baldy lowered his tone. Just watch. Third brother is going to use his big move. Chen Liang blinked. What big move? How would I know? I'm not third brother. Little seventh prince held the meat bun in his mouth and glanced at Chen Liang. Step back. Third sister-in-law said that I can't let you out. Chen Liang. Why did the word release sound so weird when the little seventh prince said it? Meanwhile, in the Yamen, young Master Liao, who was about to die, did not realize that he was going to be unlucky. He raised his nose to the sky and said arrogantly, apologize in public and compensate me with 100 or 200 taels of silver. 100 or 200 taels of silver? Helian Wei sized him up and said sarcastically, like father, like son. Master Liao really has the guts to open his mouth. Yuan Ming was not idle either. He yawned lazily and said, woman, he's obviously trying to cheat you of your money. Helian Vivian communicated with Yuan Ming using her consciousness. Her tone was neither fast nor slow. That depends on whether he has the life to take it. Yuan Ming stopped talking after hearing that. He only smiled evilly and floated behind Helian Vivian, waiting to watch a good show. Young Master Liao naturally could not hear their conversation. He was still arrogant. I dared to speak because I have the capital. I didn't want to come here at first, but Lord Wei, you've gone too far. Not only did you abuse your power to capture my men, but you're also questioning my father. What right do you have? A few officials in the provincial capital finally found an excuse. They looked at Helian Vivian disapprovingly. Lord Wei, you're in the wrong. You must apologize. Apologize? Helian Vivian sneered. My lords, on what grounds do you want me to apologize? Are you afraid of young Master Liao's identity? Upon hearing this, the officials looked at Helian Wei disapprovingly. Lord Wei, it's not right of you to say that. We have a case to solve, so please don't always say things that incite the public's emotions. If you continue to do this, we have no choice but to take action and temporarily dismiss you from your position according to the rules. Dismiss me from my official position? Do you have the right to do that? A question suddenly came from the crowd. The officials wanted to look up to see which idiot had the guts to criticize them for handling the case. In the end, when they looked back, they were so shocked that they were tongue-tied. Lord Chen. They never thought that the governor, who was supposed to be inspecting the people in the provincial capital, would appear in a small county like Fuping County. Moreover, he was standing among the people who were listening to the trial. Judging by his attire, he seemed to be going on a private visit. Governor Chen did not say anything. He glanced at the group of people coldly. The officials suddenly felt that they were much shorter. They stood up one after another and asked, "Why are you here?" Governor Chen thought to himself, if I don't show up, you'll take away the Princess Consort's official position. By then, when His Highness gets angry, let alone these people, even an innocent fish like me will be implicated. Governor Chen glanced at Belegaju's direction subconsciously as he thought of this. Belegaju was still tall and slender. His handsome side profile was shining like a military knife. He was so cold and noble that it could almost hurt people's eyes. The two of them had met many times in the palace. Strictly speaking, Governor Chen could be considered as part of Belegaju's people. After all, he was a minister who followed the retired emperor. He understood the old man's thoughts. Naturally, he would stand on Belegaju's side when doing things. The ministers still did not understand why Governor Chen went to see the little private advisor who was standing beside the county magistrate the moment he arrived. Magistrate Liao even showed the enthusiasm he had when he first came to the capital. He took a big step forward as if he wanted to hold Governor Chen's hand. "Lord Chen, you're finally here in Fuping." At this time, the ministers suddenly realized that the governor was invited by Magistrate Liao. He was indeed influential in the capital. Even the governors of 3 provinces had to show him respect. However, the ministers did not understand why Lord Chen would speak for the county magistrate of Fuping County. Could it be that they misunderstood and that Lord Chen did not mean what he said just now? Among them, only Master Liao felt a little uneasy. When his father addressed him as Lord Chen, he suddenly remembered why he had come to Fuping County in the first place. Chapter 488. He could not find a chance to lay his hands on Wei Liao because Barbarian Bull from the Chen family was protecting him in all aspects when they were in the provincial capital. Now, even Governor Chen himself was here. Therefore, it was not certain whether this was a good thing or a bad thing. "Father." Young Master Liao wanted to remind Magistrate Liao. However, Magistrate Liao was a little carried away when he saw Governor Chen's appearance. Money was the most powerful thing in the world. He only went to the provincial capital to talk to Governor Chen about the road construction in Fuping County. He did not expect him to come personally so soon. With Governor Chen's presence, he did not believe that he could not get Wei Liao down. "Lord Chen, you saw it too. Fuping County is in trouble. I don't know how the new county magistrate was trained, he even dares to beat people up." Speaking of this, Governor Chen pretended to sigh. "We don't have a choice. That's why we thought of asking him to let go of the power in his hands first." Bullshit. Since his father was here, Chen Liang decided to jump in as well. "You've been slandering my boss since the beginning." Young Master Liao saw that Chen Liang was here too. He was so shocked that his face turned pale. He reached out to grab Magistrate Liao's sleeve. However, Magistrate Liao did not see his son's action. He sneered, "Young man, don't speak without thinking." Apart from Magistrate Liao, all the officials present had seen Chen Liang before and knew his identity. When they heard Magistrate Liao's words, they wished that they could shut him up. Governor Chen looked at him and said slowly, "Lord Liao, the young man you're talking about is my son. I can't guarantee anything else, but this child rarely speaks without thinking." Lord Liao's accusation seems to be a little harsh. Magistrate Liao froze. He did not expect that the bodyguard who followed Hellion Vivian around was the young master of the Chen family. The expression on his face was very interesting. So it's young Master Chen." Magistrate Liao stammered. His smile was uglier than when he was crying. "It's my fault for being clumsy. It's my fault." Chen Liang snorted coldly, "You're not clumsy at all. Ever since my first lady came to Fuping County, she has done a lot of good deeds. During the drought in Fuping County, she tried her best to eliminate the interference of corrupt officials like you. She buried pipes and channeled water so that the villagers could eat. Not only did you spread rumors about her, you even incited the people to criticize her. Yang Dajiao is such a scum. If it wasn't for Boss, would you have helped Miss Liu and the others? You only know how to take money. You will help whoever gives you more money." "Chen, young Master Chen, you can't say that. You don't understand the situation, so you probably don't know." The other provincial officials also stood up, wanting to clear their names. Chen Liang interrupted them coldly, "Why don't I know anything? I arrived in Fuping County a day ago. I was the one who received Boss when he went to the provincial capital. I saw everything that happened in Fuping County within a day. If it wasn't for Boss forbidding me to come out, I would have already beaten all of you up, a bunch of corrupt officials." "A day ago? Didn't that mean he arrived in Fuping County earlier than them?" The few officials from the provincial capital froze. Then, they slowly looked in the direction of Hellion Vivian. Since he already had the support of the governor's son, why didn't he ask young Master Chen to come out sooner? If he had come earlier, they would not have made such a mistake. Wait a minute. This Wei guy seemed to be doing this on purpose. Gradually, the officials realized that they seemed to have fallen into a trap that had been set up long ago. The other party had been waiting for this moment, waiting for all of them to fall into the trap. Only then would he make his move and wipe them out. The officials suddenly felt a chill down their spines. It was a fear that came from the bottom of their hearts. Initially, they thought that he was just a lowly county magistrate with no background. They thought that they could get some tributes by simply messing around with him. Now that they thought about it carefully, they had been passive in every step they took ever since they arrived in Fuping County. No matter what they did or said, they were just walking into the other party's trap. They regretted listening to Magistrate Liao's words and coming to Fuping County out of greed. What made them even more regretful was that they went against this Wei guy. They had never heard of such a person in the officialdom. He was so meticulous that anyone who dared to challenge him would die. If such a person had appeared before, someone would have tried to rope him in. However, they were sure that this Wei guy was a new face. Because of this, they let their guard down and fell deeper into the trap. Hellion Vivian touched the bridge of her nose. She knew what the officials were thinking by looking at their expressions. They must have thought of her as a scourge. However, they did not know that she was not the one who dealt with the officialdom. It was also not her idea to stop Chen Liang from coming out. She had always been good at beating people up directly. However, the royal family was different. They were very insidious. Hellion Vivian secretly glanced at her private advisor when she thought of this. Beligaju naturally noticed her gaze. When no one was paying attention, he moved his sleeve slightly and held her hand that was hanging by one side. He smiled evilly. "What's wrong? Do you have any orders, sir?" "No." Hellion Vivian quickly shook off his hand. She thought that if this scene was seen by others, they would definitely think that they were gay. This time, Bailey Jiaoju actually didn't care about her restlessness. On the contrary, he felt that the way her pair of cheeks slightly puffed up was extremely similar to a little squirrel asking for food. His voice became indifferent. "Bear with it for a while. Wait until we kill all these people, then I'll feed you." Hellion Vivian was speechless. When did she ask for food? Although she was indeed a little hungry, would His Highness make it sound so easy to kill people? Magistrate Liao did not know that there was still a big move, so he hurriedly explained to Chen Liang, "Young Master Chen, this is all a misunderstanding, this is all a misunderstanding. When Lord Wei buried the pipe to divert the water, we really didn't know that the river could go higher. We thought that Lord Wei was just imagining things, so we explained everything clearly later on. Young Master Chen, you can't just label us as a corrupt official like this. I really can't bear it, I really can't bear it." Chen Liang was a straightforward person. In addition, he was still young. He did not understand the officialdom at all. Now that he heard Magistrate Liao's shameless words, he only wanted to go up and give him a kick. Fortunately, Governor Chen was there to stop him. He knew that his son would not be able to win against this old fox with the surname Liao. After all, this matter was already difficult to handle. If he said something wrong, Liao would make it sound like a small matter. Just as Governor Chen was thinking about these countermeasures, a magnetic and noble voice suddenly sounded behind his ear. It was just a faint voice, but it gave people a sense of superiority. "You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,